Chapter 2319, Tier 3? As if time had stopped, silence fell over the entire Cold Spring Forest. Whether it was the Dragonkin or Shadowless Empire's members, they were all in a daze as they looked at the Dragonkin warrior that had collapsed before the large tree. At this moment, not only was the Dragonkin warrior in a heavily injured state, but its silver armor even sported a large cut. If one looked closely, one could even see the white, broken bones of the Dragonkin warrior beyond this cut. If not for God's domain setting that made it so that creatures would die only if their HP fell to 0, the slash from before would undoubtedly have taken the Dragonkin warrior's life. Even so, the attack still took away a large chunk of the Dragonkin warrior's HP. What did he do? Night Reader could not help her shock as she stared at Xueqi, the person who executed the attack on the Dragonkin warrior. Previously, when she used her trump card to attack the Dragonkin warrior, she had only managed to make it stumble back one step. Xueqi, on the other hand, heavily injured the Dragonkin warrior with just one stroke of his sword. For a moment, she wondered if the main god system was playing a joke on her. After all, she was currently level 97. She was also equipped in 4 pieces of epic equipment and a top-tier epic weapon. In addition, she had a special legacy that increased her basic attributes and physique by a significant margin when fighting in darkness. Even the apex experts of super guilds were most likely no match for her when it came to basic attributes. Now, however, Xueqi, who looked very ordinary and gave off no aura whatsoever, actually surpassed her strength by several degrees. No matter how she looked at this situation, she simply could not bring herself to accept it. He is probably Zero Wings guild leader, Black Flame. According to rumors, he has already reached level 100. Vastlock guessed as he looked at Xueqi, his evaluation of Zero Wing increasing by a grade. Even if he is level 100, there is no way he can have enough strength to send the Dragonkin warrior flying. We can't, even if we activated our berserk skills, Night Reader said. Although the Dragonkin warrior was only a great lord, its strength was just slightly inferior to the mythic-ranked purgatory giants. Even if they activated a berserk skill, they would, at most, just match the Dragonkin warrior. In order to send it flying over 20 yards, they would need strength at the standard of mythic monsters at the very least. Of course, it's impossible just by reaching level 100. However, I suspect that he has already completed his Tier 3 promotion quest, Vastlock said in a definite tone. Tier 3? How is that possible? Night Reader simply could not bring herself to believe Vastlock's speculation. Previously, she already considered the rumor of Xueqi reaching level 100 a wild exaggeration. The Shadow World had much more abundant leveling resources compared to the main continent. Yet even they, the top players of Shadowless Empire, had only managed to reach level 97. Now, however, Vastlock was telling her that Xueqi had not only reached level 100 but also completed his Tier 3 promotion quest. This was unbelievable. The difficulty of promotion quests increased with each subsequent tier. The difficulty of the Tier 3 promotion quest was especially high. To complete the Tier 3 promotion quest, players would not only have to be of a sufficiently high level but also needed to invest a lot of time into making preparations. For Night Reader herself, even if she had made all the preparations she could, she still wouldn't be confident of completing her Tier 3 promotion quest. After all, experts of their caliber couldn't settle for a mediocre result in their Tier 3 promotion quest. Needless to say, someone like Xueqi wouldn't settle for this, either. While Night Reader and Vastlock were talking about Xueqi, the heavily injured Dragonkin warrior suddenly stood up and let loose a deafening roar, which echoed throughout the forest. Moreover, the Dragonkin warrior did not stop at just one roar. Instead, it repeatedly roared again and again. Did it get hit too hard in the head? Night Reader found the Dragonkin warrior's incessant roaring strange. Moreover, the injured Dragonkin warrior wasn't the only one acting strangely. Every other Dragonkin in the army also started roaring. No! Vastlock's complexion darkened as realization struck him. They're calling for reinforcements. As soon as Vastlock finished speaking, a deafening roar came from the depths of the forest. Following which, a commotion broke out in the distant forest, and very quickly, a huge swarm of Dragonkin charged out of there. The newly arrived Dragonkin numbered more than 3,000, including as many as 5 Dragonkin warriors. Run! Vastlock shouted, his scalp turning numb at this sight. At Vastlock's order, Shadowless Empire's members immediately dropped what they were doing and fled for the cave they had come from, without hesitation. However, despite seeing Shadowless Empire's members retreating, Xueqi and the others still maintained their positions. "Why aren't you guys running yet?" Night Reader asked as she looked at Xueqi. "We'll block them, so you guys should use this opportunity to retreat." "It is still too soon for you all to come here," Xueqi said before walking toward the Dragonkin army, together with Zero Wings members. Since Vastlock had warned him before out of Gudv Karat Alel, Xueqi naturally didn't mind helping Shadowless Empire now. "You're crazy. Do whatever you want." Night Reader huffed when she saw Zero Wing advancing toward the Dragonkin army. She then turned her head away and left. Xueqi might have reached Tier 3, but he was only one person. He wouldn't be able to keep the several thousand Dragonkin at bay all by himself. Not to mention, 5 more Dragonkin warriors had joined the fight now. Even if the swordsman could suppress these great lords, could he suppress all 8 of them? However, before Night Reader had gone 100 yards away from her previous position, she saw Zero Wing's team clashing with the Dragonkin army. When the two sides came into contact, Xueqi initiated the battle by executing Void Slash, using the 6 slashes his skill generated to send 6 Dragonkin warriors flying back and crashing into the Dragonkin behind them. As for the 2 remaining Dragonkin warriors, Kola stopped one of them while Turtledove stopped the other. Kola's strength might not be comparable to the Dragonkin warriors, but with the fragmented legendary ranked Titan Guard and his Dragonslayer legacy, he neutralized all of the Dragonkin warriors' attacks without fail. As for Turtledove, although she was inferior to Kola in terms of both defense and strength, she had Yen Tianqing assisting her from the side. Yen Tianqing influenced the Dragonkin warriors' attacks, such that they all landed on Turtledove's shield and nowhere else. After seeing that all 8 Dragonkin warriors were stopped, Alluring Summer, Iluafei, Zhao Yueru, and the other magical class players started bombarding the approaching Dragonkin captains and Dragonkin fighters. Like a mobile turret, Zhao Yueru sent even the High Lord ranked Dragonkin captains flying with her spells. With just one AoE spell, she created a large clearing amid the Dragonkin army. Even the Dragonkin warriors stumbled when struck by her attacks. Despite the severe numerical disadvantage, Zero Wing's 100-man team coped with the Dragonkin army without suffering any casualties and relentlessly pressed deeper into the Cold Spring Forest, suppressing the Dragonkin army thoroughly. Dragon King fighters and Dragonkin captains died quickly, one after another, under Zero Wing's bombardment. "Crap! Are they even human?" An axe-carrying Dark Berserker, who had already arrived back at the cave, cursed aloud when he saw the Dragonkin army getting repulsed. He had had a tough time dealing with just one Dragonkin captain, yet Zero Wing's members were toying with the High Lords as if they were children. Zhao Yueru, Alluring Summer, and Iluafei, in particular, had devastated the several dozen Dragonkin captains with their attacks, preventing the High Lords from reaching Zero Wing's rear line. Xueqi was even more frightening, single-handedly suppressing 6 Dragonkin warriors. Let alone damaging the swordsman, the 6 Dragonkin warriors couldn't even get within 5 yards of him. Their HPs also plummeted. After only a short moment, the 6 Dragonkin warriors had already lost 1/10 of their HPs. At this rate, the deaths of all 6 were just a matter of time. How is Zero Wing so strong? After Zero Wing's team disappeared into the snow-mantled forest, Night Reader was in a daze for a long time. When she remembered how they had thought to prove their superiority over Zero Wing by defeating the Purgatory Giant, she felt a little embarrassed. She had never imagined that things would turn out this way. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Xueqi's performance, in particular, had shocked her. Every one of his actions was beyond her perception. If he had decided to contest for the Purgatory Giant back then, the consequences would have been dire. Most likely, he could annihilate their entire 200-man team all by himself. Let's return now. Zero Wing is much stronger than we initially thought. The higher-ups will need to adjust our approach to Star Moon Kingdom, Vastlock said after giving the matter some thought. Xueqi's strength was simply too frightening. He was no longer in existence Tier 2 players could hope to contend with. Moreover, the other members of Zero Wing also possessed considerable strength. With the guild definitely much stronger than ordinary major powers, Shadowless Empire would have to tread carefully in Star Moon Kingdom from now on. After saying so, Vastlock turned around and had everyone prepare to leave the Cold Spring Forest. As for Night Reader, she turned involuntarily for one last look towards the direction Xueqi disappeared. So what if you're Tier 3? Just you wait. I'll catch up with you soon. At that time, I'll show you just how powerful I am. I'll make you regret looking down on me. When Night Reader thought of the words Feng said to her before, she gnashed her teeth in anger and frustration, feeling as if she had been treated like a fool. Immediately afterward, she turned around and left the cold spring forest. Chapter 2320. Level 100 Exploration Zero Wings members gradually advanced deeper into the cold spring forest. As the map had never been explored by players before, the number of Dragonkin Zero Wings members encountered along their journey kept increasing. Fortunately, the number of Dragonkin warriors they came across did not, so the growing number of enemies did not affect the team negatively. It only provided the team with even more EXP. The EXP granted by level 100 monsters was far greater than that of level 99 monsters. Although Xueqi had brought Zero Wings main force to grind at a level 100 Forbidden Land before, everyone's level had been very low. As they had to rely on Tier 3 demons to do most of the fighting back then, their grinding efficiency had been considerably low. Now that everyone in the team had the combat power to contend against level 100 lords, they made short work of the level 100 plus Dragonkin. As a result, everyone's experience bar increased at a very rapid rate. After grinding for just 6 hours, everyone in the team had already leveled up once. Now, even the lowest leveled player in Zero Wings main force was level 98, whereas the guild's top experts like Yen Tianqing had reached level 99. As for Xueqi, he too had gained his final percent and reached level 101. However, in contrast to the team's leveling speed, the Dragonkin's loot rendered everyone speechless. Even the best piece of equipment dropped by the High Lord ranked Dragonkin captains was level 100 Mysterious Iron rank. Moreover, this was from the first kill of these Dragonkin captains. Otherwise, the weapons and equipment they dropped would be only bronze rank. The quality of the Dragonkin captain's loot was far inferior to that of level 99 High Lords. Xueqi, however, did not find this situation surprising. After reaching level 100, ordinary experts would be able to gear themselves only in level 100 Mysterious Iron equipment. If they wished to get level 100 Secret Silver equipment through killing monsters, they needed the support of a sufficiently strong team. As for obtaining level 100 Fine Gold weapons and equipment from monster drops, that was absolutely impossible for them. Only Tier 3 experts would have the ability to grind for level 100 Fine Gold weapons and equipment. As for Dark Gold weapons and equipment, players would need both superb strength and luck. This was also the reason why, after frontline players reached level 100, the various powers of God's domain would start frantically investing in Tier 3 experts and Master Lifestyle players. Past level 100, quantity no longer mattered. Instead, what mattered the most was quality. One could say that Tier 3 experts and Master Lifestyle players were the true foundation of the various powers. Without Tier 3 experts and Master Lifestyle players, level 100 plus weapons and equipment at the Fine Gold rank or better would be inaccessible. Meanwhile, if a guild did not possess top-tier level 100 weapons and equipment, how was it supposed to develop? Level 100 plus monsters weren't easy opponents, especially after players reached level 105. Before reaching level 105, players could still rely on Dark Gold weapons and equipment that were below level 100 to fight monsters and bosses that were below level 105. However, that would no longer be possible at level 105. Past level 100, monsters would receive a significant improvement in strength every 5 levels. Without top-tier weapons and equipment of a corresponding level, Tier 2 players would not be able to contend with monsters and bosses of the same level at all. Only Tier 3 players would be able to. However, players capable of getting promoted to Tier 3 as soon as they reached level 100 were extremely rare. Moreover, although Tier 2 players might have an easier time completing their Tier 3 promotion quest as their levels increased, they would still require the assistance of top-tier weapons and equipment to succeed. Guild leader, I found a parchment that can't be appraised. Blackie said excitedly after picking up a parchment dropped by a Dragonkin warrior. He then handed it to Xueqi, anticipation filling him. His appraisal had already reached the advanced standard and was only one step away from the master standard. An item that he could not appraise definitely wasn't ordinary. A parchment. After Xueqi used omniscient eyes to appraise the parchment, surprise and joy filled him. Not bad. This is a magic trap design. A trap design? Blackie, however, was disappointed when he heard Xueqi's words. How unlucky. I thought we got a design for a weapon or equipment. Traps were common in God's domain. Some players would even use traps to deal with field bosses. However, compared to magic arrays, traps were very much inferior. Some traps were even ineffective against monsters at Great Lord rank or above. However, Tier 2 players could easily deal with Lord-ranked monsters. Setting up traps to deal with a Lord would be a waste of time and materials. This is something very good, Xueqi said, chuckling. In any case, have everyone keep an eye out for it. If any more drop, bring them to me. Also, have Melancholic Side prepare the materials necessary for making this trap. Prepare as many as possible. Most likely, every player in God's domain had suffered at the hands of traps before. In fact, many experts had been killed by traps. However, as players couldn't properly utilize traps against monsters, traps never gained much popularity among players. However, traps were almost guaranteed when exploring ruins in God's domain, so how could they be useless? The reason for everyone's misconception about traps being useless was simply current players being limited to using and producing basic traps. The materials and production method for basic traps were common and simple, so it was only natural that they had very little effect against monsters. As for why players were capable of making only basic traps right now, it was because the main god system intended for players to slowly adapt to and learn about traps before reaching level 100. However, after reaching level 100, the main god system would remove all restrictions on players. Naturally, this included the limitation on traps, and players would be able to make intermediate traps. Not only would intermediate traps use much rarer materials, but their production difficulty would also increase significantly. In return, however, their effectiveness against monsters would improve substantially. Let alone dealing with level 100 lords, intermediate traps could deal serious damage even to level 100 great lords and place them in a heavily injured state for a short time. Moreover, traps were more suitable for the general public than precious magic arrays, as they were much less costly to produce. During Xueqi's previous life, many Tier 2 experts had relied on intermediate traps to hunt high-ranking bosses and grind monsters. If not for these traps, the majority of Tier 2 players wouldn't have been able to survive in level 100+ neutral maps at all. Meanwhile, the design the Dragonkin warrior dropped was for the Countercurrent Swamp, a magic trap that was effective against monsters below level 120. When triggered, it would not only immobilize monsters for a brief period but also reduce the reaction speed and basic attributes of the trapped monsters by 15%. Of course, the stronger a monster was, the less effective the trap would be against them. Even so, the Countercurrent Swamp was very useful against Great Lords below level 120. Past level 100, even Great Lord-ranked monsters were considered bosses. Ordinary Tier 3 experts would have to flee if they came across a Great Lord of the same level. Soloing the boss would be impossible. With the magic trap, however, even Tier 2 players could kill level 100 Great Lords, so long as they had a sufficiently large team. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Alright, I'll notify the others about it, Blackie said, nodding. Even so, he still wasn't particularly interested in the magic trap. After all, he didn't believe the Countercurrent Swamp's effects could compare to those of a magic array. Following which, Xueqi had his team slaughter the Dragonkin armies that they came across. He did not rush to the Cold Spring Forest Central region. After one day of steady grinding, Xueqi obtained another 4 trap designs. 2 were for the Countercurrent Swamp while the other 2 were for a physical trap called Burning Fire. Physical traps had many more weaknesses than magic traps. For example, they were quite useless against flying monsters. However, physical traps also had very obvious benefits. For example, they could be used to target a group of monsters. Moreover, they could cause very high amounts of damage continuously, so long as a monster remained trapped inside them. If magic traps and physical traps were properly paired up, even Tier 2 players could live a profitable life in level 100+ neutral maps. They would be inferior to Tier 3 players only when it came to raiding dungeons. Meanwhile, after the team killed another level 102 Dragonkin warrior, a purple glow enveloped the bodies of many members as these people reached level 100. The invisible chains that previously bound these players also shattered. Chapter 23-21. Superior Mythic. The players that had reached level 100 were astonished. My attributes are so high. And I feel so much more coordinated than before. That's not all that's changed. My senses are so much sharper and more realistic. In this state, my combat power has increased by at least 30%. Amazing! There's such a huge gap between level 99 and 100. Once I complete my Tier 3 promotion, Tier 2 experts under level 100 won't stand a chance against me. Ordinary players might not sense the changes that occurred when they reached level 100 right away, but Yan Tianqing and his companions noticed the changes immediately. They were stunned when they did. None of them had realized how great the difference was between level 99 and 100 before now. After leveling up once, their combat power had reached a whole new standard, and this was considering that most of their weapons and equipment were still level 95. If they equipped level 100 weapons and equipment, their combat power would skyrocket. Naturally, there was a major difference between level 95 and level 100 equipment. The level 100 mysterious iron items they had obtained after slaying the Dragonkin made that obvious. A level 100 mysterious iron weapon's attack power could almost rival that of a level 95 dark gold weapon, and the basic attribute bonuses were even slightly higher. It was easy to imagine how much their attack power, defense, and basic attributes would rise if they fully geared themselves with level 100 fine gold weapons and equipment. Furthermore, they had yet to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests. Now that a number of us have reached level 100 Guild Leader, we should start raiding level 100 team dungeons, Blackie eagerly suggested after experiencing the changes due to his new level. They hadn't even dared consider setting foot in a level 100 team dungeon previously. Dungeons monsters were far stronger than monsters in the fields, after all, and without Xueqi's help, they had barely held their ground against level 100 plus field monsters before reaching level 100. Trying to raid a level 100 team dungeon would have been suicide. However, they had grown considerably stronger after leveling up, especially the players with epic weapons and equipment. These players' combat power had risen by far more than a mere 30%. Now, they'd have no issues taking on a dozen or so Dragonkin warriors, even without Xueqi's help. They definitely qualified to challenge level 100 team dungeons. Not only could they test their newfound strength by successfully raiding such a dungeon, but they'd also acquire high-quality level 100 weapons and equipment. In addition, their achievement would help spread Zero Wings' fame across the eastern continent, maybe even throughout God's domain. The other level 100 players voiced their agreement with Blackie's suggestion. They were all eager to challenge a level 100 team dungeon. Don't get so excited just yet. The system's restrictions on your bodies have been lifted now that you've reached level 100, so your physical condition is slightly different. Fight the Dragonkin first and give yourselves a chance to adapt, Xueqi said, shaking his head. Smiling, he continued, if you're so eager to test your new limits, I know the perfect place for you to do that. Players' combat power would substantially increase upon reaching level 100. They could now use their 5 senses and reaction speed to its full potential, but exerting all of their strength wasn't an easy task. Even domain realm experts would need quite some time to adjust, not to mention refinement realm experts. Xueqi had only been able to adapt so quickly because he was most familiar with this body. Although there were some minor differences between his current form and the body he had used during his previous life, he had sensed and adapted to these minor changes easily as a domain realm expert, perfectly exhibiting his full potential. A perfect place to test our strength? Where is it, Guild Leader? Kola excitedly asked. Unlike the others, he carried the Titan Guard, a fragmented legendary shield. Once he reached level 100, the restrictions on his shield had also vanished. As a result, he sensed a massive boost to his combat power. Overall, he had likely improved more than anyone else on the team. A superior mythic boss's lair, Xueqi announced, gesturing to the Cold Spring Forest Central region. Every member of the team was stunned when they heard Xueqi's answer. God's domain's mythic monsters weren't equal in terms of strength. Among them, superior mythics stood at the apex of their kind, wielding even more power than mythic-ranked archaic species. Everyone here was an expert, and they all had an idea of how powerful mythic monsters would become after level 100. Trying to challenge a level 100 mythic monster before they reached Tier 3 was tantamount to throwing themselves into the jaws of death, let alone challenging a level 100 superior mythic. Relax. I'm quite confident that we will be victorious, one Xueqi assured them, chuckling at his carrot now. Take some time to adapt to your new bodies. A Tier 4 dragon was an incredibly powerful being, but he had his heavenly dragon's breath. The ring was capable of suppressing dragons to an intense degree. Including Anna and Kite's assistance, they definitely had a chance of defeating the monster. Hearing that Xueqi was confident of their victory, his teammates breathed a sigh of relief. They obediently followed their leader's orders and used the nearby Dragonkin as training dummies. After around 4 hours of training, The team had a basic grasp of their unrestricted strength. Once his team was ready, Xueqi led them toward the Cold Spring Canyon. The Cold Spring Canyon was far more dangerous than the Cold Spring Forest's other areas, home to many level 103 and 104 Dragonkin. Even level 105 Grand Lord ranked Dragonkin commanders wandered the area. If Zero Wings members had come here before reaching level 100, they would have died the moment they aggroed a Dragonkin commander. Fortunately, Kola could single-handedly tank one of these Grand Lords at level 100, preventing the Dragonkin from targeting any of his comrades. Once he had a hold on the Dragonkin commander's aggro, the rest of the team slowly shaved away the Grand Lord's HP, eventually killing it. When Blackie looted the Dragonkin commander, he obtained the Dragon Tooth Pendant, a level 100 fine gold necklace. Its basic attributes were more than 2 ranks higher than a level 95 dark gold necklace, and it increased the power of the wearer's dragon bloodline. Kola ended up winning the bid for the necklace, and when he equipped it, not only did it increase his basic attributes, but it also improved the purity of his dragon blood, improving his physique. Xueqi and his team finally reached the heart of the Cold Spring Canyon after another 6 hours or so of combat. He then retrieved the transfer stone he had received from the Adventurers Association and began to chant the incantation. The transfer stone transformed into violent energy that pierced an invisible barrier before Zero Wings' main force. As the barrier shattered, it revealed a paradise. Zero Wings members could hear birds chirping and smell fragrant flowers, and as they entered the space, they felt a pleasant sensation encompass their bodies. The fatigue from their long hours of grinding faded quickly as their stamina and concentration began to recover. This space was nothing like the outside world. However, before any of them had the chance to inspect this area, a horrific aura washed over them, so intense that it nearly knocked them on their backs. A dragon? Turning toward the aura's origin, their gaze rested on a 30-meter-tall infant dragon. Protected by its snow-carrot scales, the infant dragon was sound asleep. Every breath it took was powerful enough to shake the entire area. Ice Dragon, Heathweight. Dragon, Mythic. Level 101 HP 1,840,000, 000/1-840-000-000. When the team saw Heathweight's statistics, they had no doubt that if this infant dragon wished it, it could likely shatter this entire space, plunging it into the void. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU dragons had always been the symbol of destruction in God's domain. The various NPC cities' libraries contained a vast amount of information on these beings, always depicting dragons as natural disasters that could bring about the downfall of an entire country. If there hadn't been so few dragons in existence, they would likely have become God's domain's absolute overlords. Are we really going to raid a dragon, guild leader? Kola asked, gulping as he watched the slumbering ice dragon. For a moment, Kola wondered if Xueqi were playing some kind of joke on them. Even if he were tier 3, Heathweight could likely kill him in one hit, much less now. That's right. That's what we're going to raid. Xueqi nodded after taking a deep breath. He then pulled 2 summon guard scrolls from his bag and summoned Anna and Kite. Chapter 23-22. Draconic spell. Heathweight was a tier 4 dragon, and normally, Xueqi would have tried to stay as far away from it as possible. Heathweight might merely be an infant dragon, but it still stood at the peak among tier 4 beings. It was no exaggeration to say that this dragon was invincible among tier 4 beings of the same level. Even 1,000 tier 3 players would meet their doom if they encountered a tier 4 infant dragon of the same level, let alone tier 2 players. The gap between their life ratings was simply too vast. Normally, only tier 4 heroes, who had passed a trial of God and received a god's blessing, would have the strength to contend with an infant dragon. However, Heathweight was under a life curse, which significantly reduced the effects of its life rating. If that weren't the case, it wouldn't have only had 1.84 billion HP and only be categorized as a monarch-ranked boss. Even a random dragon had the strength of a world boss, and a top-ranked world boss at that. Normally, defeating a true dragon without a tier 6 god-ranked player would be impossible. Otherwise, the players that had successfully defeated a dragon of the same tier wouldn't have been regarded as legends and inspiration for countless players in God's domain. As the 2 summoning arrays gathered the necessary mana, the level 106 summoner, Anna, and the level 105 swordsman, Kite, emerged. During the short break Xueqi had taken after completing his tier 3 promotion quest, Anna and Kite had completed another epic quest. As a result, their weapons and equipment had changed. Previously, they had both worn epic equipment that could grow with them to level 100. But now, they both had epic set equipment that would grow until they reached level 150. They had also both reached or surpassed level 105, and their basic attributes had undergone a considerable transformation. Despite the fact that Xueqi had reached Tier 3 and wore the disintegration armor, his attributes were no match for Anna's and Kite's. Once he had summoned his personal guards, Xueqi retrieved the Bible of Darkness and called forth a demon. Xueqi's Bible of Darkness was the real deal, so its power was unmatched. Moreover, as its user rose to a new tier, the Bible of Darkness would exhibit even greater strength. After a moment, a 20-meter-tall demon gate appeared before Xueqi. As the demon gate slowly opened, a Tier 4 Great Demon, enveloped in blue flame, stepped through. Blaze Demon. Dark Creature, Great Demon. Level 116 HP 420, 000, 000/420, 000, 0000 Wings main force members gasped when they saw the Blaze Demon. They then turned to stare at Xueqi with incredulous looks. "You're too vicious, guild leader. You can actually summon a great demon to do your bidding." The various superpowers would likely go crazy if they knew about this, Blackie said as he glanced at the Bible of Darkness in Xueqi's hands. Blackie had seen the Bible of Darkness before, so he knew just how powerful it was. Its ability to summon Tier 3 demons was particularly useful to Tier 2 players. A Tier 3 demon would even be useful after players reached Tier 3. Such demons had many skills and spells and were far more powerful than ordinary Tier 3 summoned creatures. However, Blackie hadn't dreamed that the Bible of Darkness could summon a Tier 4 Great Demon once Xueqi had reached Tier 3. This power was ridiculous. Tier 4 summoning scrolls were even rarer than epic weapons and equipment, and the various superpowers treated such items like priceless treasures, avoiding using them unless absolutely necessary. And yet, Xueqi could summon a Tier 4 Great Demon with the Bible of Darkness at no cost. Although a Great Demon had far less HP than ordinary mythic monsters of the same level, its combat power would be far greater than ordinary mythic monsters. "Alright, everyone, get ready. The Blaze Demon will tank the Ice Dragon later during the raid. You guys only need to support an attack from the sidelines," Xueqi announced, chuckling as he returned the Bible of Darkness to his bag. The Spirit Emperor, Fantasy Extinguisher, had caused a sensation throughout God's domain during Xueqi's previous life due to the Bible of Darkness. With it, he had developed Fantasy Shrine from a first-rate guild into a superpower that could even suppress the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion in the Black Dragon Empire. Since Xueqi now had the real Bible of Darkness, he had even greater power. The Bible of Darkness was the very reason that Xueqi even dared to consider challenging the Cold Spring Forest's monarchs. He wouldn't have harbored the thought if he only had Anna and Kite to rely on. After all, a mythic-ranked monarch was even stronger than a Tier 4 hero. With Xueqi's command, Zero Wing's main force members went to work. Once his teammates were in position, Xueqi sent the Blaze Demon to charge at the Ice Dragon. Within seconds, the Blaze Demon was within 500 yards of Heath Weight. As the Blaze Demon approached, the Ice Dragon's eyes opened abruptly, and it woke from its slumber, turning its amber gaze on the intruder. Needing neither chance nor gestures, Heathweight spread its jaws. With Heathweight as the center, the Ice Dragon sucked a 300-yard radius dry of mana before a towering white beam shot toward the Blaze Demon. Tier 4 Dragon Breath. Compared to the Dragon Breath Xueqi's Black Dragon Doppelganger had used, a true dragon's Dragon Breath was on an entirely different level. The Blaze Demon transformed into an ice sculpture before flying back over 500 yards. At the same time, the area around Heathweight became a world of ice, the attack utterly transforming the terrain. Aside from Xueqi, every member of Zero Wing's team was dumbfounded. They had all heard legends and details about dragons, but they hadn't actually seen one in action. At this moment, they finally understood what a dragon truly was. If they hadn't stood over 1,000 yards away, that Dragon Breath attack would have killed every one of them. Fortunately, the Blaze Demon had initiated the raid. Even so, the Blaze Demon had lost over 20 million HP after taking a direct hit from Heathweight's Dragon Breath. All of you snap out of it. Once you get close to the boss, make sure that you're spread out. Healers, throw everything you have at the Blaze Demon. Xueqi barked. He couldn't help his sigh of relief as he watched the Blaze Demon break free from its icy prison, appearing mostly intact. If that Dragon Breath had heavily injured the Blaze Demon, this raid would be over. Neither Anna nor Kite could tank the Ice Dragon, and their combat power couldn't even compare to the level 116 Blaze Demons. They'd either die instantly or be heavily injured if they took a direct hit from a Tier 4 Dragon Breath. The Blaze Demon ran at Heathweight again. Fortunately, Dragon Breath had a relatively long cooldown, and because of that, the Ice Dragon switched to using its claws to attack the incoming demon. The Blaze Demon proved to be no match for Heathweight. Each time it blocked an attack, it lost over 8 million HP. Although the Blaze Demon launched a counterattack from time to time, its Tier 4 spells only dealt a few million damage. The two creatures' strengths were on completely different levels. Xueqi only activated Miniature World and Ring of Brilliance to suppress the Ice Dragon and enhance his allies' combat power once the Blaze Demon had secured Heathweight's aggro. Unfortunately, Miniature World was barely effective against the Infant Dragon. However, Heavenly Dragon's Breath's Dragon Domination was fully effective, reducing the dragon's basic attributes by 20%. Once Heathweight's basic attributes had been suppressed, Zero Wings healers were barely able to keep up with the damage the Ice Dragon dealt to the Blaze Demon. Xueqi also used Life Domain to restore the Blaze Demon's HP to full, on occasion. For a time, the Ice Dragon was helpless against the Summoned Demon, during which, Heathweight's HP continued to decrease under Zero Wings bombardment. 95%, 90%, 85%. However, Heathweight was not an easy opponent, and it turned its Dragon Breath on a random target from time to time. The players who had failed to dodge the attack had become ice sculptures, losing all of their HP in the blink of an eye. Dragon Breath had even slain Turtledove, despite her active life-saving skill. As Heathweight's HP continued to fall, the intervals between each Dragon Breath grew shorter. By the time Heathweight's HP reached 30%, only a little over half of the team remained standing. Despicable ants! I'll burn you to ash! Heathweight bellowed before chanting an incantation. A threefold magic array with a 500-yard radius then appeared above the Ice Dragon, plundering all of the mana within a 1,000-yard radius. Tier 4 Draconic spell. Meteorite Fall. Suddenly, a colossal meteorite, which blocked out the sun, descended from the magic array, growing larger as it emerged. When Zero Wings survivors saw this, they began to despair. A Tier 4 Draconic spell. Even Xueqi's expression darkened at the unexpected sight. How is this possible? Read latest chapters at Xueqi World. EU Draconic spells were some of the most primitive spells in God's domain, beginning at Tier 4. Even dragons rarely possessed Draconic spells of the same tier. Meanwhile, a Draconic spell was even more powerful than a large-scale destruction spell, capable of rivaling the god's divine arts. A single blow from such a spell could annihilate tens of thousands of creatures. Not even invulnerability spells could stop their devastation. Anna, summon the Valkyrie. Xueqi shouted. Not even he had a countermeasure for a Tier 4 Draconic spell. Anna's Valkyrie was his only hope. Anna immediately began to chant her angel summoning incantation. Chapter 23-23. Valkyrie vs. Dragon. Anna finished the angel summoning incantation in 2 seconds, and the moment she did, a gigantic magic array appeared above her, no smaller than Heathweight's meteorite fall. A Valkyrie with 3 sets of pure white wings then emerged, landing before Anna. A Tier 4 higher Valkyrie? When he saw the upgraded version, Xueqi was stunned. Angel summoning was Anna's legacy skill, and Xueqi had always treated it as his final trump card since the skill allowed Anna to summon a Valkyrie that was 2 tiers higher than her. When Anna had been a Tier 2 personal guard, she had been able to summon a Tier 4 Valkyrie. Now that Anna had reached Tier 3, she should logically be able to summon a Tier 5 Valkyrie. With such a powerful ally, Zero Wings' remaining team should have no problem suppressing a Tier 4 infant dragon. However, Anna's Valkyrie was still only Tier 4. The only difference between the previous Valkyrie and this one was the extra set of wings. Angel's wings represented their status. An angel with 3 sets of wings was considered a higher Ankh, with 4 sets were considered archangels. In terms of life rating, archangels rivaled dragons, while higher angels were slightly weaker. But before Xueqi had any time to ponder the matter, the meteorite above them had nearly completed. Block it! Xueqi couldn't care less about the Valkyrie's status at the moment. He immediately commanded Anna to send her Valkyrie to stop Heathweight's meteorite fall. The higher Valkyrie began to chant an incantation as soon as Xueqi gave the command. The higher Valkyrie's incantation was unique. Rather than draw mana from her environment, it drew on a primitive form of mana from the void. In less than a second, a dazzling golden spear of thunder manifested in the Valkyrie's hands. An origin spell. Xueqi was ecstatic to see the spear of thunder form from the void's mana in the Valkyrie's hands. Origin spells were the most primitive form of magic in God's domain. They were the root of all spells, capable of rivaling divine arts. However, humanity had lost track of origin spells due to repeated wars between the gods. Xueqi had never expected the higher Valkyrie to use such magic. Before Xueqi could get over his excitement, the giant meteorite, so large that it covered the sky and so heavy that it shattered space around it, began to descend. It looked as if Armageddon had begun for a moment, and Zero Wings members fell further into despair. As the meteorite began to fall, the higher Valkyrie finished her incantation. She then threw her spear at the meteorite. Soundlessly, the thunder spear transformed into a streak of golden light as it struck the incoming meteorite. Boom! The moment the two attacks met, the impact caused a powerful explosion. The resulting shockwave was so powerful that it nearly lifted the players below off their feet. The gigantic meteorite disintegrated into countless smaller meteors that rained down, creating craters as they struck the ground. Every meteorite was nearly as powerful as a Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell. Zero Wings members gaped as they watched the stones slam into the ground. Tier 2 and 3 players were little more than ants in a battle of this scale. If this battle had taken place in a city, rather than in this special space, the spell's residual effects alone would be more than enough to level half the city. After blocking Heathwaite's meteorite fall, the higher Valkyrie shifted her attention to the ice dragon itself. She formed another spear of golden electricity in her hands before vanishing. By the time Zero Wings players realized where she had gone, the Valkyrie had appeared before Heathwaite. Tier 4 Superior Instantaneous Movement. Not only did Superior Instantaneous Movement have more range than the normal spell, but there was also almost no delay between the caster's disappearance and reappearance. Moreover, the spell didn't affect the ambient mana, making it impossible for enemies to determine the caster's destination. When she appeared before Heathwaite, the higher Valkyrie thrust her spear at the ice dragon. The attack was so fast that not even Xueqi would have enough time to react. If that attack struck him, he'd die instantly. However, Heathwaite was a dragon and reacted instantly, countering the golden spear with a rage-filled claw strike. Boom! The impact of the collision created a deafening boom that echoed throughout the area. Surprisingly, the Valkyrie's strength was too much for Heathwaite, and the infant dragon stumbled 2 steps backward. After suffering this humiliating blow, Heathwaite turned a wrathful glare on Xueqi. Heavenly Dragon's breath suppression on dragons was simply too powerful, and the passive ability had plundered 20% of Heathwaite's basic attributes. Heathwaite already suffered a life curse, so its strength was slightly lower th the higher Valkyries. Now Dragon's domination affected it as well. It was no match for the summoned angel. Gah! Everyone, attack with everything you've got. Xueqi quickly shouted when he realized that Heathwaite was thoroughly suppressed. He had originally planned to use angel summoning only after Heathwaite had gone berserk, but he had been forced to use it early due to meteorite fall. Although Anna had risen to Tier 3, which strengthened her angel summoning, its duration had only increased from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. Unfortunately, Heathwaite still had nearly 30% of its HP remaining, and 15 seconds wouldn't be enough to kill it. Attack! Yan Tianxing shouted. Yan Tianxing realized the predicament they were in, as well. He immediately activated his berserk skill and his trump card, Shadow Stink, a Tier 2 taboo skill. In a frenzy, Yan Tianxing transformed into 3 streams of fog, attacking the ice dragon and dealing over -70,000 damage with each hit. Occasionally, the fog streams landed a critical hit, dealing over -150,000 damage. The rest of Zero Wing survivors activated their trump cards as well, with the weaker players dealing around -50,000 damage, while the stronger members of the team, such as Zhao Yueru, dealing upwards of -200,000 damage. Zhao Yueru's critical hits even dealt over -500,000 damage to the ice dragon. Her Tier 3 fire-type spells were a massive advantage in this raid. However, Xueqi's DPS was undoubtedly the highest. After activating Heavenly Dragon's power, his strength could even surpass an ordinary mythic monster's, and as a result, he dealt over -1 million damage, even without fire-type skills or spells. When he used Void Slash, he instantly devoured over 10 million of Heathwaite's HP. With the higher Valkyrie, Anna, Kite, and the Blaze Demon attacking as well, Heathwaite's HP rapidly decreased. 25%. 20%. 15%. The higher Valkyrie continued to suppress Heathwaite after the dragon had gone berserk. However, she didn't deal quite as much damage. When Heathwaite's HP dropped below 10%, the higher Valkyrie's duration ended, and she vanished. "Humans, you're dead!" Heathwaite bellowed as the higher Valkyrie disappeared. The ice dragon swiped its tail at the Blaze Demon and Anna's Holy Knight, sending both of them flying. It then swiped a claw at Anna, ignoring the Blaze Demon completely. The ice dragon intended to rid itself of the most troublesome opponents before dealing with the remaining pests. Even without her army of summoned creatures, Anna's DPS was exceptionally high. With her summoned creatures, she was the infant dragon's most challenging opponent. Although Anna's spells could overwhelm ordinary mythic monsters, they were utterly useless against the berserk Heathwaite. "Don't think you can take out our main DPS so easily." Suddenly, Xueqi appeared before Anna and activated his disintegration power, swinging Killing Ray at Heathwaite's incoming claw. The moment Xueqi activated disintegration power, it cancelled out Heavenly Dragon's power. In return, however, the ability temporarily elevated Xueqi to Tier 4. Not only did he now wield Tier 4 strength, but his physique, reaction speed, and skills had risen as well. Boom! When the attacks collided, Xueqi stumbled 3 steps backward due to the impact, losing more than 50,000 HP. He was still at a disadvantage, but he had successfully blocked Heathwaite's berserk attack. When that attack had failed, Heathwaite responded with another claw strike. This time, however, the ice dragon activated a skill in the process. Tier 4 skill, Sky Splitter. 5 razor-sharp claws flew toward Anna from different directions, each with more power than the previous claw strike. As soon as Xueqi steadied himself, he executed Lightning Flash to counter the attacks. Executing the secret technique proved far easier after his forceful upgrade to Tier 4, and he sent 17 sword lights at the approaching claws. Pang! 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 A series of explosions blew apart the ground around Xueqi, but even after all 5 attacks, he had only stumbled back 3 steps. He also only lost around 200,000 HP. Even at Tier 3, Xueqi had over 1,700,000 HP, far less than he currently had. Losing 200,000 HP was nothing life-threatening. After watching Xueqi pin down the ice dragon, his teammates breathed a sigh of relief and continued their frenzied assault against Heathwaite. Time passed quickly. As the battle progressed, Heathwaite's attacks grew stronger, but with the Blaze Dragon and the Holy Knight's help, Xueqi kept the ice dragon in check, preventing it from harming Anna or Kite. However, the team suffered the occasional casualty when Heathwaite fired its dragon breath. 5%. 4%. 3%. When disintegration power's duration ended, Xueqi followed it up by activating Power of Darkness and Blade Awakening, relying on his twofold berserk's effects to tank Heathwaite's attacks. Read latest chapters at Xueqi World. EU. When less than 5 seconds of Xueqi's twofold berserk remained, Heathwaite's HP had fallen below 7 million. Meanwhile, fewer than 30 players were still standing, and the surviving healers could no longer keep up with the ice dragon's damage output. Die! Xueqi activated Divine Providence and swung Killing Ray for a final blow. Lightning Slash. A massive lightning bolt sliced through Heathwaite's neck, leaving a deep gash across its throat. That lightning bolt also destroyed the last of the infant dragon's HP. Chapter 23-24. Ice Dragon's Loot. Everyone's experience bars exploded with EXP as Heathwaite's colossal body crashed to the ground. A level 100+ mythic boss would already provide a lot of EXP, and as a monarch-ranked boss, Heathwaite would award even more. In the end, the 24 or so survivors watched as their experience bars rose beyond 90%. Although they had only reached level 100 less than a day ago, they were almost at level 101. Xueqi was now at 63% of level 101, as well. The EXP from the Ice Dragon alone was worth nearly 3 days of normal grinding. It's finally dead. And I thought we were finished, Blackie said, sighing deeply as he plopped down on the ground. He was ecstatic that they had finally won. Near the end of the raid, Heathwaite's defense and attack speed had steadily increased. At one point, Xueqi hadn't even been able to pin down the Ice Dragon with the Blaze Demon and Holy Knight's help. Moreover, Heathwaite's battle recovery generated over 10 million HP every 5 seconds, and as a result, they had barely moved the infant dragon's HP bar toward the raid's end. Yan Tianqing and the others felt like survivors of some great disaster. None of them wanted to imagine how the raid would have gone without Shifeng's Bible of Darkness and 2 personal guards. When Heathwaite had died, it had dropped over 100 items beside its corpse, forming a small mountain that radiated waves of intense pressure. It's so powerful. This is the first time I've ever seen items that emitted such intense pressure. I wonder what kind of items dropped? Maybe there's a legendary item. Everyone stared at the mountain of loot with glowing eyes, and when they heard mention of a legendary item, the eager light in their gazes grew even brighter. They all forgot about their exhaustion for a moment, wanting to charge forth and inspect the dropped items. The strongest known item at this stage of the game was fragmented legendary rank, which everyone assumed Xueqi possessed. However, Zero Wing's main force members knew the truth. There was more than one fragmented legendary item. Naturally, this was a guild secret. Exposing this truth would only invite God's domain's various powers to target Zero Wing, and only an expert of Shifeng's caliber could openly own a fragmented legendary item without having to fear for his life. If anyone else were in his position, they wouldn't even dare to set foot outside of an NPC city. Epic items couldn't even compare to the benefits a fragmented legendary item provided, much less a true legendary item. Based on what players had learned from the game's libraries, every legendary item in the game had the strength to decimate heaven and earth. With such an item, players would have the power to transcend tiers. Before their fight with Heathwaite, these players wouldn't have been so concerned about such a power, convinced that they could bridge the gap between tiers with high enough basic attributes. But now they understood what that kind of strength truly meant. Without the strength to transcend tiers, Tier 3 players had no hope of contending with superior mythic bosses. Alright, let's resurrect our fallen. Xueqi simply chuckled when he saw the hunger in everyone's eyes. He found their assumptions hilarious. Obtaining a legendary item with so little effort was impossible, and after level 100, weapons and equipment drop rates decreased considerably. On average, even mythic bosses' loot would consist of fine gold weapons and equipment. One would have to be incredibly lucky to acquire dark gold weapons or equipment from a mythic boss. However, Xueqi had to admit that he was surprised by how much Heathwaite had dropped. This was the first time he had felt such an incredible pressure from a boss's loot, as well. Having received their orders, the surviving team members pushed aside their curiosity for the moment and began to resurrect their teammates. Fortunately, a monarch boss's lair was similar to the space within dungeons. Even if players died here, they'd only lose 10% of their EXP, and only 5% if a healer revived them. Thus, the level 100 players that had fallen hadn't dropped back to level 99. While his companions revived, Xueqi organized the infant dragon's loot. Amazing! Is this a benefit for the first kill? Xueqi was stunned as he examined the items. His only aim in killing Heathwaite was to complete his crusade quest and become Cold Spring Canyon's lord. He hadn't expected to gain much from the raid itself, yet he was elated that he had chosen this monarch boss to raid. The ice dragon had dropped a total of 121 items, which was normal for a monarch. However, the items' quality far exceeded Xueqi's expectations. There were as many as 24 inferior legendary materials among the loot, all necessary for producing epic and fragmented legendary items. Even without a design for such items, these materials could increase one's production success rates when crafting level 100 dark gold items. Level 100 plus dark gold items were incredibly rare in God's domain, only slightly more common than epic items under level 100. They'd still be rare even after master lifestyle players gained the ability to craft level 100 plus dark gold items. The required materials for producing such items were incredibly precious. They only dropped from powerful bosses, and each boss dropped very few at a time. Moreover, the production success rate for level 100 plus dark gold items was very low. Advanced master lifestyle players would only have a theoretical success rate of 35%. Every player that focused on their subclass knew that theoretical success rates were nowhere near the actual success rates. It was merely the highest possible success rate players could achieve. In practice, a minor deviation in the process could reduce the success rate to 20% or 30%. If one included an inferior legendary material in the process, however, their production success rate with level 100 plus dark gold items would increase by at least 5%. With these 24 materials, Zero Wing could produce a dozen or so level 100+ dark gold items. Surprising Xueqi further, Heathwaite had also dropped legendary materials. The Ice Dragon's Claw. Countless Grandmaster Forgers dreamed of obtaining this item. Dragons were one of the rarest types of monsters in God's domain, and they were immensely formidable. Acquiring a dragon's claw was nearly impossible. When used to forge weapons, dragon's claws were godly materials. As long as the player made some minor modifications to the claw, they could easily produce an epic weapon, even without an appropriate design. If they had an epic weapon design, they could craft a fragmented legendary weapon by using a dragon claw as the base material. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Any dragon claw that had appeared on the market during Xueqi's previous life had easily fetched the price of 2 fragmented legendary items in an auction. After all, one could sacrifice 2 random fragmented legendary items to secure a weapon of the same rank that was more compatible with its wielder. And Heathwaite had actually dropped 2 ice dragon's claws. Why wouldn't Xueqi be excited? It was no wonder why the ice dragon's loot had radiated such an incredible pressure. Aside from materials, Heathwaite had dropped 5 dragon's blood vials that could boost Cola and Alluring Summer's dragon bloodlines, further strengthening their Dragon Slayer classes. While Xueqi appraised the several designs the infant dragon had dropped, one result left him utterly dumbfounded. How is this possible? A flying ship design. Chapter 23-25. Crimson Dragon Flying Ship. Xueqi fell silent for a long time as he stared at the tattered design in his hands. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't believe that Heathwaite had dropped a flying ship design. Flying mounts were incredibly rare in God's domain, and even with a common flying mount, one would have endless bragging rights. Even the weakest flying mount was rarer and more precious than a level 100+ epic weapon. Flying ships, on the other hand, were even more amazing. The most ordinary flying ship's movement speed could rival an extraordinary flying mount, and one could accommodate up to 100 people at a time. Their aerial combat abilities were even at the peak of Tier 3. However, the main continent's various countries had monopolized the technology for flying ships, and players typically had no way to get their hands on one. At best, players could rent an airship, which could only transport goods and people, from one of the kingdoms or empires. One would be dreaming if they thought to rent a flying ship, an aerial weapon of mass destruction. Xueqi had never even heard of anyone obtaining a flying ship design by killing a boss. If players wanted to acquire a flying ship design, they'd have to raid a major NPC power's main headquarters or steal one from one of the NPC kingdoms or empires. Of course, both methods were exceedingly dangerous. There was a safer method. Players could create one themselves. The subclass requirements for creating a flying ship, however, were immensely demanding, and players would have to invest a lot of effort and time into the research. As for the cost of creating one from scratch, even superpowers would have a hard time justifying such a massive expense. Most superpowers would rather purchase a completed flying ship. Purchasing a flying ship was much easier than purchasing a flying ship design. A guild could do so through the black market or by earning a sufficiently high status in an NPC country. Regardless of which method a player or power relied on, the price would be exorbitant. Furthermore, players could only purchase a very limited number of flying ships. As far as Xueqi knew, the easiest way to buy a flying ship was to become a duke in a kingdom. As a duke, a player could purchase one flying ship for 80,000 gold. To acquire more, they'd have to try their luck in the black market. Unfortunately, the black market only accepted ancient gold, not regular gold. And yet, Xueqi had just obtained a flying ship design after killing Heathwaite. If the various powers of his previous life had known this, they would have slaughtered every ice dragon in God's domain. Unable to contain his excitement any longer, Xueqi clicked on the design to inspect its statistics. He wanted to know what rank this flying ship design was. Crimson Dragon Flying Ship Design. Can be used to construct a common flying ship with a maximum capacity of 100 people and peak Tier 3 combat power. The Crimson Dragon Flying Ship carries 8 magic cannons and 1 magic crystal cannon. Piloting the flying ship requires a minimum of 6 people. Producing the flying ship requires 1,000 Titan Silver, 10,000 Void Iron, 2,000 Mana Stones, and 100 Magic Elven Stones. Sure enough, it is the most common type. Xueqi inwardly sighed when he saw the statistics. If he had obtained a bronze flying ship design, he could have ruled over the entire Cold Spring Forest without any issues. Bronze flying ships had Tier 4 combat power, after all, and would be a massive threat to Tier 3 players. Not even Xueqi would escape from a bronze flying ship's all-out assault with his life. A flying ship wasn't a monster. It did not have the mobility flying monsters possessed, and it didn't have monsters' vast repertoire of skills and spells. The so-called Tier 4 combat power didn't mean that the flying ship's overall combat power was limited to Tier 4. Rather, each of the flying ship's attacks had peak Tier 4 power. With over a dozen cannons, a flying ship's bombardment could even blow a Tier 4 Apex expert to smithereens. Without a Tier 4 legendary flying mount or something even more powerful, they'd have to flee the moment they spotted a bronze flying ship. After giving the matter some thought, Xueqi realized that he was being too greedy. Superpowers struggled just to obtain a single common flying ship, let alone a bronze flying ship. 1,000 Titan silver and 100 magic elven stones. The production cost is vicious. The Crimson Dragon flying ship's necessary materials astonished Xueqi. Titan silver was a rare byproduct that could be obtained from mining fine Titan Oregon. Thus far, Zero Wing had only compiled a little over 2,000 Titan silver ingots. Magic elven stone was even rarer and more valuable. One could only obtain the super rare or from grade 2 or veins. It was just slightly more common than 7 luminaries crystals. Including the other materials, producing the Crimson Dragon flying ship would cost roughly 50,000 gold, several times more than the bronze-ranked Guardian puppet's production cost. However, it was still cheaper than trying to become a duke. Moreover, he would get more value for his money. A common flying ship would be far more useful to players than bronze combat puppets. Even though a common flying ship's combat power was only at the peak of Tier 3, it could transport 100 players, allowing them to travel across the continent freely. Moreover, players could rest and recover while on a flying ship, which they couldn't do while riding a flying mount. The recovery ability wasn't very powerful, but it was a precious asset when exploring level 100+ neutral maps. Moreover, players would be able to flee when they encountered mythic-ranked flying monsters thanks to the flying ship's defensive capabilities. Did the boss drop something good, guild leader? Blackie asked, curious about the joyful expression on Xueqi's face. Here, take a look for yourselves, Xueqi said, chuckling. Aside from the flying ship design, he shared the loot's information in the team chat. Crap. Legendary materials. And that's a design for a level 100 secret silver equipment. This fine gold-ranked polar ice set is amazing. When they saw the boss's loot, every member of the team was excited. Heathwaite might not have dropped an epic item, but these players weren't fools. They knew how precious inferior legendary and legendary materials were. These were all top-tier materials that could be used to produce epic items. Moreover, the Ice Dragon had dropped 7 pieces of level 100 dark gold equipment and over 30 level 100 fine gold weapons and equipment pieces. These weapons and equipment would grant many of the team members a massive boost to their combat power. The polar ice set Heathwaite had dropped was particularly eye-catching. It might only be a 6-piece, level 100 fine gold set equipment, but its attributes were nearly 3 ranks stronger than that of level 95 dark gold equipment. With this set, a level 100 elementalist could easily defeat lower-level experts in full epic equipment. Following which, Xueqi held an internal auction, and Iluafe claimed the polar ice set. Now, only Xueqi, Kola, and Zhao Yueru, who had at least one fragmented legendary item and multiple pieces of epic equipment, had higher basic attributes than she did. Once the weapons and equipment had been distributed, Xueqi returned to White River City with his team. Since Zero Wing's main force members had finally reached level 100 or higher, they qualified to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests. Naturally, he couldn't continue to help them level up in the Cold Spring Forest, and more than a dozen of the team members were ready to challenge their promotion quests now. Wasting time would be a pity. Players would only become true powerhouses in God's domain once they reached Tier 3, after all. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Xueqi spent some time advising his players on how to complete their Tier 3 promotion quests before he dismissed them. Those that weren't strong enough yet left to prepare a bit more, and the players that were strong enough headed to the Adventurers Association immediately. Meanwhile, Xueqi headed toward White River City's Adventurers Association for another matter. Within one of the Adventurers Association's second-floor VIP reception rooms. Lord Bronze Legatee, how may I be of service? The female elven administrator asked as she entered the room. I wish to turn in my crusade quest for Cold Spring Forest's Ice Dragon, Heathweight, Xuefeng announced as he retrieved a colossal, silvery-white dragon horn and placed it on the table between them. This dragon horn was proof that he had slain Heathweight. As soon as Xuefeng proved that he had completed his crusade quest, the sounds of a series of system notifications reached his ears. Chapter 23-26 1-Star Lord System. You have completed the crusade quest for the Ice Dragon, Heathweight. Rewarding Lord's Token, level +1, Star Moon Kingdom Reputation +300, Guild Popularity +10,000 System. Congratulations! You are the first player to become a Lord in God's domain. Rewarding Lord Popularity +100. System. Congratulations! For acquiring 100 Lord Popularity points, you have been promoted to a 1-Star Lord. The system notification repeated 3 times while Xuefeng rose to level 102. The system promoted me to a 1-Star Lord just for being the first player to become one? Xuefeng couldn't believe his eyes as he stared at the system notifications. The concept of a Lord was still likely foreign to most players, not to mention Lord Popularity. When players became a Lord in God's domain, they'd gain the ability to recruit NPCs to form their own Knight Division. However, the process was similar to searching for personal guards, so it had its challenges. Furthermore, a Knight Division had 5,000 slots. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to fill these slots with high-quality NPCs. The only method to ease the process was to increase one's Lord popularity. The higher a Lord's popularity was in God's domain, the easier it would be to persuade and recruit NPCs with high growth potential. Unfortunately, increasing one's Lord popularity was incredibly difficult, only possible by completing special quests. Moreover, one would only gain a handful of popularity points with each quest. Accumulating 100 Lord popularity normally required a lot of time and effort. Meanwhile, every 100-point increment was a turning point. The first 100 points would elevate one to a 1-Star Lord, at which point players wouldn't have to run around NPC cities in search of appropriate NPCs. They could simply start a draft through the Adventurers Association. These drafted NPCs might not be uniformly powerful, but there would be quite a few with high growth potential. If one were lucky enough, they might even recruit a secret Silver Guard. Of course, with more Lord popularity, the standard of their drafted NPCs would increase. The problem of increasing his Lord popularity to 100 points had troubled Xuefeng. Without a solution, he'd have to spend several months finding capable NPCs to fill his 5,000 knight slots. Fortunately, God's domain solved that problem for him. Administrator Lorraine, I wish to draft members for my Knight Division through the association, Xuefeng declared as he showed the Lord's token to the Elven administrator. Very well. However, the fee will depend on the scale of the draft you wish to implement. Generally, a draft in a town costs 10 gold per week, 100 gold per week in a city, 300 gold per week in a kingdom's capital, and 1,000 gold per week in an imperial capital. Where would you like to implement your draft? Lorraine asked. How expensive? It's no wonder why the Adventurers Association is the 4th wealthiest power in God's domain. Xuefeng was speechless after hearing the prices. Second- and third-rate guilds had no hope of obtaining a lord's position in the past. The various superpowers and top-ranked first-rate guilds had monopolized this benefit. Hence, Xuefeng hadn't actually known how much it would cost to implement a draft. He certainly hadn't expected it to cost this much to form a Knight Division. The results of a draft depended on one's luck. NPCs would not simply respond to a draft because the Adventurers Association had issued it. According to Xuefeng's calculations, he would need to implement a draft in several hundred cities to recruit 5,000 knights with relatively high growth potential in a short time. I'd like to implement the draft in these country cities, Xuefeng decided. After giving the matter some thought, he felt it would be best to recruit from cities in flourishing kingdoms and empires. In the end, he paid 44,500 gold to implement his draft in more than 400 cities. It was a large enough expenditure to put a first-rate guild's finances in the red. God's domain's guilds were pushing their experts to reach level 100 right now, and as a result, it was only natural that their expenses would rise. Fortunately, Zero Wing had the Candlelight trading firm and multiple guild towns and cities to generate income. The guild earned just as much profit as an ordinary superpower. However, Zero Wing still needed to support its main headquarters in the real world and the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. The guild wasn't particularly wealthy at the moment. It seems I'll have to find ways to increase the guild's profits. With how much Zero Wing has right now, financing 5,000 knights is impossible. After paying for the drafting fee, Xueqi mentally calculated how much he'd need to spend on his future knight division. A 5,000-man knight division would definitely be an amazing asset, but it would be expensive to maintain. Unlike the NPC soldiers one could recruit to defend guild towns and cities, knights weren't affiliated with a kingdom or empire. Rather, they were considered a lord's personal combat power. Hence, players would not receive subsidies from a kingdom or empire, relying on their own funds to pay their knights' salaries. Affording a knight division wasn't easy, and to make matters worse, each knight's salary would depend on the NPC's growth potential. Read latest chapters at Xueqi World. To hire and nurture a bronze-ranked, Tier 2 knight, one would have to spend 50 gold per week. Multiplied by 5,000, a division of bronze, Tier 2 knights would cost 250,000 gold per week. Moreover, this cost didn't include the price of weapons and equipment for these knights. For a moment, Xueqi couldn't help but admire the first-rate guilds that had ruled their own territories in the past. Once he had taken care of the draft order, Xueqi left the Adventurers Association and made his way to the Candlelight trading firm. He intended to start the Crimson Dragon flying ships production immediately. After reaching level 100, the various powers would prioritize their aerial development. Whoever controlled the sky would become an overlord in God's domain. Level 100+ maps were very far from civilization, after all, and the ability to travel through the sky would give players a huge advantage when grinding for resources. Moreover, this advantage would become more prominent as time passed. If he wanted to bolster Zero Wing's development, he had to arm the guild with flying ships. Chapter 23-27, Producing a Flying Ship. White River City, Candlelight Trading Firm. The special room, which was the size of a basketball court, contained various piles of rare materials. Any ordinary player would likely go into a frenzy trying to claim them all if they saw this room. These materials were easily worth more than 15,000 gold altogether, and even though the value of coins had significantly depreciated by this stage of the game, that was still an astronomical amount of money to ordinary players. Converted into credits, it would be enough for the average citizen to live out the rest of their lives without worry about food or shelter. Here are the last of the materials you requested, guild leader, Melancholic Smile said as she handed 100 magic elven stones to Xueqi. Xueqi had basically asked for everything the Candlelight firm had in stock of the rare materials he needed, particularly the Titan Silver and Magic Elven Stone. These were rare drops, even from the Flame Demon's valleys attributed or vain. No other guild could likely fulfill Xueqi's demand for 100 Magic Elven Stones. Good. Xueqi nodded approvingly after inspecting the materials in the room. He then continued in a serious tone, "I'll need you to help me with something later, but you must keep it an absolute secret." "I can't tell anyone?" Melancholic Smile was a little confused. The Candlelight trading firm rigorously screened any potential members before they were recruited. Moreover, all core members were required to sign a series of strict contracts, ensuring the smallest chance possible that the firm's technology and methods leaked. Sharing such technology required one to transfer designs. Without the correct design, it didn't matter if a player knew how to produce an item. Now, however, Xueqi forbade her from even mentioning their discussion. It was a bit unusual. "You'll understand soon," Xueqi said. He then carefully pulled the Crimson Dragon flying ship design from his bag and placed it on the stone table before him. Melancholic Smile didn't think much of the design initially. She had seen plenty of precious and rare designs and recipes in her line of work. She had grown numb to such surprises. However, when she realized what this design booklet depicted, she froze in shock. Flying ship. Melancholic Smile could not believe her eyes. As a lifestyle player and the Candlelight trading firm's manager, she could only dream of crafting an airship, which was only a method of transportation, let alone a flying ship. Countless lifestyle players dreamed of creating flying ships, especially after seeing airships fly from one city to another. However, they assumed that would remain a dream. Players had absolutely no access to designs for airships and flying ships due to the various kingdoms and empires' heavy restrictions regarding their flying technology. Creating one would require an immense amount of knowledge and skill, not to mention a ton of materials for the necessary experiments. And yet, Xueqi had just dropped a flying ship design on the table between them. It was at this moment that Melancholic Smile more or less realized why Xueqi had forbidden her from speaking of this to anyone. Although the trading firm had restrictions in place that prevented members from sharing trade secrets, those restrictions were only effective in the game. Candlelight couldn't stop these players from running their mouths off in the real world, and if news that Zero Wing had obtained a flying ship design went public, the consequences would be unimaginable. The various powers already hungered for their own airships. On the other hand, flying ships were capable of transportation and aerial combat. Needless to say, the various powers' desire for flying ships was even greater, nearly maddening. If the various powers learned that Zero Wing had a flying ship design, they'd do anything they could to take it, and if they couldn't, they'd ensure that Zero Wing didn't keep it. Acquiring a flying ship wasn't easy, but with the design, one could create as many flying ships as they wanted. After a certain point, flying ships would be significantly more useful than combat puppets in battle. Players had ways to deal with combat puppets after all, but none of them knew how to deal with a flying ship. Hence, the various powers would do whatever necessary to ensure that Zero Wing failed to develop, and they'd strike while they still had an opportunity. That's right. It's a flying ship. I intend to produce one, but I can't handle the task alone. Aside from forgers, I'll need a large number of engineers and alchemists, Xueqi said. To protect this secret, however, I'll need you to split these players into multiple groups and assign them various parts to work on. I'll handle the final assembly. We're going to make one now? The very idea began to make Melancholic Smile nervous. Guild leader, just the core engine is so complex that I'm not even sure an advanced master forger can handle it. If we fail, all of this magic elven stone will be useless. Why don't we wait a little while longer? If it were only an issue of money, Zero Wing could handle it, but these magic elven stones were incredibly rare. Collecting more wasn't simply an issue of money. If they failed in producing the flying ship's engine, they would have to wait for a very long time before they'd have enough elven magic stone to attempt it again. I wish it could wait too, but Zero Wing can't afford that, Xueqi explained, flashing her a bitter smile. The various major powers were desperately leveling up, and many of them have already begun to explore level 100 neutral maps. The Shadowless Empire's members had made that clear. Once they secured a foothold in level 100 neutral maps, the various superpowers would finally be able to exhibit their true strength. Zero Wing didn't have support from any major corporations. Thus, it couldn't afford to continuously recruit large numbers of experts, especially Refinement Realm and above experts, rapidly expanding. Zero Wing would have to nurture such experts on its own. There was simply no comparison between the various superpowers and their guild. Obtaining more resources and ensuring it had time to develop was the only way Zero Wing could secure its position in God's domain. That was the only way the guild would survive the intense struggle between the various superpowers in level 100+ neutral maps. Now that Zero Wing had its own territory and had begun to draft NPCs for Knight Division, the guild needed more funds and resources to arm its knights. Maintaining a proper Knight Division with Zero Wing's current income was impossible. Unfortunately, it had become considerably more difficult to earn profits and resources from other worlds now that the planar passages had opened. That left Zero Wing with only one method to increase its income: transportation of goods. The industry would be particularly profitable when it came to moving non-bag space items. Xueqi had intended to produce intermediate traps to earn more funding, but it was too soon to introduce these items to the public. Most of the various large guilds' main forces hadn't begun exploring level 100 neutral maps yet, and demand for intermediate traps would be limited. Furthermore, Zero Wing's members would need these traps as well. Without at least 100 intermediate trap designs, it would be very difficult for Candlelight to produce enough intermediate traps for Zero Wing's purposes and to earn substantial profits. However, transportation methods were a different story, especially when it came to flying ships. Even a common flying ship could carry up to 500 non-bag space items, far more than any sailboat. In addition, flying ships' movement speed was much higher than sailboats. If Zero Wing resold non-bag space materials, it would make a killing. This was why the various superpowers had gone crazy for airships and flying ships during Xueqi's previous life. I understand. I'll copy the design for these parts and split them between multiple groups. I'll ensure that no one has any idea that we're making a flying ship, Melancholic Smile promised, nodding. She then began to examine the flying ship's design and plan accordingly. It shouldn't be very difficult to hide what they were doing. Some of the flying ship's parts were similar to those in ordinary ship designs. Most of the parts that were different would require forgers. As long as Xueqi crafted those parts himself, they shouldn't have any issues keeping this a secret. Melancholic Smile then left to distribute the construction materials and designs among the Candlelight's master lifestyle players. None of these players suspected a thing when they received their orders. This wasn't a usual process after all, especially after Zero Wing had recently begun to craft bronze speedboats. Meanwhile, Xueqi turned his full attention to forging the flying ship's engine. After producing the Guardian puppets and Hell tanks, he was quite familiar with engine production. The Crimson Dragon flying ship's engine was simply a more complex version. Sure enough, this is beyond an ordinary advanced master forger. As Xueqi examined the engine's design, he could feel a headache begin to brew. Fortunately, his forging standard wasn't a problem. With the Philosopher's Hand, he could elevate himself into an advanced master forger, so he met the engine's minimum requirements. However, the magic array that he needed to inscribe on the engine would be a challenge. It was so complex that it nearly required a master magician to complete. However, Xueqi did not panic. Instead, he calmly and slowly researched the engine's magic array and repeatedly attempted to draw it. After over a dozen hours of practice, Xueqi had finally learned how to draw the magic array successfully and barely finish it in one go. Good. Let's make the engine now. Xueqi took a short break before he focused on producing the engine. The engine's production process wasn't simple, and Xueqi had decided to use a dragon blood crystal, a top-tier inferior legendary material Heathweight had dropped, to increase his success rate. Crystallized dragon power, the dragon blood crystal was the size of a fist and contained energy that was nearly as pure as that in 7 luminaries crystals. Not only could one use a dragon blood crystal as a power core for a city's defensive magic array, but it could also reinforce magic arrays. It was easily as valuable a level 100+ epic weapon. Unfortunately, Heathweight had only dropped 1 dragon blood crystal. Xueqi had considered saving it to strengthen one of his city's magic arrays, but after giving the matter some thought, he decided to use it to increase his production success rate. A flying ship would be an immeasurable asset, after all. Time passed quickly, and the engine slowly took shape. Although others would have struggled to temper the materials, it was quite easy for Xueqi with the help of the Soul Flame. It saved Xueqi plenty of time and concentration. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Xueqi finally finished the engine's body after 6 hours of restless work. As the engine took shape, the special forging room's mana surged toward it. Sensing the change, Xueqi began to engrave the magic array immediately. Whether or not the production process was a success would largely depend on the engraved magic array at the end. Not only did the array have to be completed within a short time, but it also had to be completed in one move. Xueqi couldn't afford to pause during the process. This was the only way the engine's mana would be able to flow smoothly. A single, minor deviation would waste all of his efforts thus far. 1 minute. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. As the mana flowing into the engine began to thin, Xueqi engraved the array faster. His concentrated rapidly depleted as if he were executing lightning flash with every second that passed. Just as the mana flow was about to cut off, Xueqi finished the last connection, completing the magic array. Chapter 23-28. Advanced Flying Ship. Did it succeed? As a storm of mana enveloped the engine, Xueqi began to grow nervous. The engine was the most difficult part of the flying ship to produce, but once it was complete, the remaining parts would be fairly easy to craft. The most troublesome aspect of the remaining parts was how much manpower they required to produce. Fortunately, with Candlelight's strength, the trading firm had the manpower to simultaneously construct the parts of 3 flying ships, let alone 1. The magic array engraved in the engine began to glow as the mana calmed down, actively gathering the mana into the engine. The engine consumed so much mana that the density in the room increased. Wonderful! It's a success! As Xueqi watched, his expression shifted to one of elation. This wasn't the first time he'd forged an engine, and if it had failed, he knew the stream of mana flowing into it would have been unstable. Now that this was done, he was practically guaranteed to produce a Crimson Dragon flying ship. Moreover, he hadn't expected the mana density in the room to rise to such an extent. The flying ship's engine drew in at least 3 times more than the bronze combat puppet's engine. An engine was the very heart of a machine and played a major role in determining the machine's strength. Following which, Xueqi tapped on the engine to appraise it. System: Bronze flying ship engine has been forged successfully. Forging proficiency increased by 1,000 points. Obtained 40 million EXP. The dragon blood crystal's effects are so powerful? Xueqi stared at the results with wide bloodshot eyes. He had already been relieved that the production process had been a success, but he hadn't expected the dragon blood crystal to upgrade the engine's rank from common to bronze. Normally, bronze engines only powered bronze flying ships. An engine like this would definitely increase a common flying ship's rank. After all, common and bronze-ranked flying ships required roughly the same quality of materials. Their engines were the main factor that made a difference. Xueqi immediately notified Melancholic Smile to hasten the remaining parts construction. After more than 20 hours, Candlelight's master lifestyle players finally produced all of the Crimson Dragon flying ship's various parts. However, Xueqi didn't start the assembly process when Melancholic had delivered them. Rather, he used the 7 Luminaries Ring spatial gate to transport Melancholic Smile and himself to an open field within the White River City region. A flying ship was massive, much larger than a sailboat. The special forging room just didn't have enough space. Hence, Xueqi needed an open location for the final assembly. Of course, to protect this guild secret, he decided to construct the flying ship in an empty open plain. There was an extremely large number of parts to a flying ship. Normally, if a player tried to assemble one themselves, they'd need at least 2 days to complete the task. However, Xueqi and Melancholic Smile had already become intermediate master forgers, saving a lot of time with their skills. With Xueqi's soul flame, in particular, he could assemble and weld parts together quite quickly. After the 2 players worked for a dozen or so hours, they had finally completed the Crimson Dragon flying ship. They marveled at the 60-meter-long, 20-meter-tall mechanical ship with a crimson hull before them. So, this is a flying ship? Despite taking part in the assembly process, Melancholic Smile couldn't believe her eyes. Even from far away, the Crimson Dragon flying ship was a shocking sight to behold. Next to its colossal frame, even an extraordinary flying mount looked like an infant. Xueqi sighed ruefully as he gazed at the vessel. Crimson Dragon flying ship, advanced flying ship, maximum capacity. 130 people durability 5,000/5,000 possesses Tier 3 upper rank defensive capabilities. Item storage when liberated, 20,000 bag space slots and 800 non-bag space slots. Additional active skill 1, Magic Shield. Absorbs up to 50 million damage for 10 minutes. Cooldown: 15 minutes. Additional active skill 2, Mana Pulse Cannon. 4,000 yard range. Deals Tier 4 damage to a radius of 50 yards. Cooldown: 45 seconds. 8 cannons are currently equipped. Up to 12 cannons can be equipped. Additional active skill 2, Magic Elven Cannon. 5,000 yard range. Deals Tier 4 peak rank divine damage to a radius of 200 yards. Cooldown: 5 minutes. Additional active skill 4, Mana Field. Disrupts the flow of mana within a 2,000 yard radius, weakening all incoming magic damage from Tier 3 spells or below by 30% for 5 minutes. Cooldown: 20 minutes. Each activation costs 300 magic crystals. The bronze engine Xueqi had crafted elevated the Crimson Dragon flying ship to advanced rank. Now, this flying ship was even faster than extraordinary flying mounts, and its cannons and defenses had increased by a rank as well. This Crimson Dragon flying ship could even contend with level 100 plus mythic monsters. If his guild had had an advanced flying ship like this in the past, his and Shadow's development would have been massively different. Even if Shadow hadn't been able to contend with a superpower, it would have had enough strength to instill fear in first-rate guilds. Tier 4 experts would have dared mess with the guild. If Dragonheart Island's superpowers find out that we have this Crimson Dragon flying ship, they'll die from envy, Melancholic Smile said, astonished as she inspected the flying ship statistics. She had forged hell tanks, so she understood how powerful this Crimson Dragon flying ship was. Aside from its cannon's frightening power, its Tier 3 upper rank hull was enough to render any attack below Tier 4 powerless. Without a mythic combatant, the various superpowers would have no hope of damaging the flying ship. Even if they launched Tier 4 attacks, it would take ages for them to get past the flying ship's 5,000 durability. Envious? I'm more afraid that they'll go mad when they see it, Xuefeng said, chuckling. Melancholic's smile was a lifestyle player, not a combat power. She didn't truly understand what it meant to have a flying ship that could stand against mythic monsters. Players would be able to reach most places in God's domain with a flying ship like this. They wouldn't have to worry about the limitations flying mounts faced or attacks from powerful flying monsters. This vessel would give players a tremendous advantage when grinding for levels or transporting non-bag space items, which were becoming more valuable nowadays. Non-bag space items were becoming useful for more than just producing war weapons, buildings, and ships. Now, such items could even be used to craft players' weapons and equipment, especially level 100 plus secret silver and above weapons and equipment. This was also why these weapons and equipment pieces were so valuable. It's a pity that the flying ship's production requires so many materials. Even if we focused everything on collecting materials, it would still take a week or so before we'd have enough for a second flying ship. We'd have to get really lucky to collect enough for a third, Melancholic Smile surmised, sounding disappointed. If they could produce a fleet of flying ships now, no one would be able to get in Zero Wing's way in God's domain. Unfortunately, the Crimson Dragon flying ship required too many rare and precious materials, some of which were non-bag space items and particularly tedious to transport. If the Candlelight trading firm's main headquarters hadn't had such a large stockpile of these materials, they wouldn't have been able to construct the first flying ship so quickly. Just keep collecting the materials. Every flying ship we make right now counts, Xuefeng said. As soon as Xuefeng finished giving Melancholic Smile her next duties, he received a message notification. The sender was none other than Sind Heart, Immortal Light's guild leader. When he read the message, Xuefeng frowned. Guild leader, has something happened? Melancholic Smile asked, noticing that Xuefeng's mood had soured after receiving that message. Immortal Light has been working with the Freedom Alliance in Sea's End, and it seems that there's been some trouble that's preventing Immortal Light from transporting materials out of the area, Xuefeng said. The Freedom Alliance has invited its allied guilds to send representatives for a meeting, and Sind Heart is hoping that we'll send one to investigate the situation. Immortal Light was the naval guild that Zero Wing secretly controlled in the Apocalypse Empire. It had been relying on Immortal Light to secure its naval resources, especially those from Sea's End. The area was home to many materials that were imperative to producing ships and level 90+ dark gold weapons and equipment. If Immortal Light couldn't secure resources from Sea's End, Zero Wing would suffer, which was why Sind Heart had requested a representative from Zero Wing to resolve the matter. I think it's best if I go myself. These materials are important for Candlelight's merchandise. If we lose access to these materials, Candlelight's income will plummet, Melancholic Smile suggested. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Don't worry about it. I'll go. Right now, you need to focus on collecting the materials we need to construct the Crimson Dragon flying ships, Xuefeng said, shaking his head. The Crimson Dragon flying ship was crucial to Zero Wing's survival. Without it, the guild wouldn't be able to exert dominance in the Cold Spring Canyon. Relying on a 5,000-man night division wouldn't be enough. Not only was a flying ship faster than flying mounts, but it also had the combat power to squash Tier 3 experts like ants. Meanwhile, Xuefeng wasn't as skilled as Melancholic Smile when it came to collecting materials. After all, she had long since grown familiar with the Candlelight trading firm and its connections. I'll do that then, Melancholic Smile answered, nodding. As Zero Wing's guild leader, Xuefeng would naturally be a stronger representative. Moreover, she didn't have the energy to manage the material collection while addressing the issues in Sea's End. Melancholic then used a return scroll to teleport back to White River City, while Xuefeng stored the Crimson Dragon flying ship in his epic spatial bag and made his way toward the Apocalypse Empire. Chapter 2329, Times Have Changed. Apocalypse Empire, Blue Bay City. After teleporting to Apocalypse City, Xuefeng continued toward Blue Bay City, one of the Empire's port cities. Although Blue Bay City wasn't a particularly large NPC city, its player traffic was intense. Xuefeng saw an endless stream of players entering and leaving the city's teleportation hall. Moreover, many of these players wore exquisite clothing and the 2-star merchant's insignia. Some even had the 3-star insignia. The merchant's insignia was proof of a merchant player's ability. The higher a merchant player's star rank was, the greater their ability. Normally, 3-star merchant players were supported by a large guild, and they possessed significant resources and sales connections. Hence, they were known as great merchants and were even rare in imperial capitals. And yet, Xueqi encountered quite a few great merchants in Blue Bay City. Based on the bland reactions to these merchant players, their presence in the city didn't seem to be unusual. So many great merchants gathered in Blue Bay City because it was a trading port. Countless players came into port each day with resources from the various neutral powers out at sea, which allowed the merchant players in the area to earn huge profits. This city's development speed is amazing. I doubt it'll be long before Blue Bay City is promoted to a large-scale city and gains a Tier 4 NPC magistrate manager. As he watched the various horse and transport carriages rolling down the streets, Xueqi had to admit that Sindhart had impressed him. When Sindhart had wanted to move Immortal Light to a new city, Xueqi had suggested that he develop near the sea. The various first-rate guilds hadn't been paying much attention to the ocean at that time, after all. By relying on the few resources Zero Wing had provided, Sindhart had established Immortal Light in one of the Apocalypse Empire's port towns, eventually expanding the guild to occupy all of Blue Bay City. Now, Blue Bay City was almost ready for its promotion into a large-scale NPC city, and Immortal Light's naval prowess had grown powerful enough that the guild didn't need to fear first-rate guilds. Sindhart's management was even more impressive than Gentle Snow or Aqua Roses. Not only would Blue Bay City grow larger once it became a large-scale NPC city, but the conveniences it offered would also improve. The city would have no trouble accommodating a large number of players, and Immortal Light would even qualify to contend with the Apocalypse Empire's first-rate guilds. As Xueqi left the teleportation hall, he headed toward a nearby advanced restaurant. A level 96 man approached him as he arrived. The Elementalist wore 5 pieces of epic equipment, and the weakest piece on him was level 95 Dark Gold rank. 2 more level 96 players followed the Elementalist, one of which was a cleric, while the other was a berserker. Both wore 3 pieces of epic equipment. Seeing these 3 greet Xueqi, the rest of the players in the restaurant were surprised. Who is that guy? Immortal Light's guild leader and 2 of its great experts are actually welcoming him. Could he be some big shot? Every player in Blue Bay City knew of Immortal Light's guild leader, Sindhart, as well as the 2 great experts that accompanied him. To secure control of the city, Immortal Light had challenged and defeated many of the large guilds that had occupied Blue Bay City. It had even sunk a first-rate guild's fleet, which had spread its fame across the Apocalypse Empire. Moreover, Sindhart was even one of the top 10 elementalists in the Empire. Even first-rate guilds' guild leaders treated him with respect. Yet now, Sindhart had been waiting to greet an ordinary-looking player. Why wouldn't this surprise them? Hearing the hushed discussions around him, Sindhart had Immortal Light's members clear out the restaurant. The spectators obediently stopped talking and scattered. I hadn't expected you to make the trip here, Brother Yi Feng. With you, we'll stand a much better chance in Sea's End, Sindhart said as he greeted Xueqi. Brother Sindhart, you jest. May I know what happened with the Freedom Alliance? Why is it calling in its allies for a meeting? Xueqi asked, getting straight to the point. I've just received some information regarding the situation. Let's head inside to continue our conversation, Sindhart insisted, his expression becoming disheartened at the mention of the Freedom Alliance. He led Xueqi into the advanced restaurant he had fully reserved earlier. As Xueqi and Sindhart entered the restaurant, the cleric and berserker gave each other disgruntled looks behind Xueqi's back. This guy doesn't think much of our guild, does he? He started demanding answers as soon as the boss walked up to him. Our boss is too mild-tempered. If I were in his position, I would have given this guy a piece of my mind. I don't want him thinking that Immortal Light is the same small guild it had been in the past. Forget it. He'll see how powerful Immortal Light has become once we get to Sea's End. The 2 experts weren't pleased with Xueqi's behavior. Immortal Light might have received a lot of resources from Zero Wing and shared half of its shares with the guild, but Immortal Light had changed. Now, it was only slightly weaker than the Empire's first-rate guilds, and on the water, it was even stronger than some of them. Not only was Sindhart Immortal Light's guild leader, but he was also an extraordinary expert who had successfully repelled the peak experts King's Return had sent. Even superpowers were wary of his strength at sea, yet Xueqi treated the man so casually. Once they had taken their seats in the restaurant, Sindhart filled Xueqi in on the details regarding the Freedom Alliance's recent actions. A new power had joined the Freedom Alliance, and now the Alliance had 12 major fleets, not 11. This new power was exceptionally powerful. It had started out as the last-ranked 12th fleet, but it had soon taken the top position in the Freedom Alliance. This had significantly changed the status quo in the Freedom Alliance. The Alliance had only controlled 3 of the major cities in Sea's End, but now, it controlled 5. Naturally, this had caused a qualitative improvement regarding its resource income. Normally, this development would be a good thing, but the newly minted First Fleet wanted to reorganize the Freedom Alliance's partnerships with the various powers, including disqualifying some of them. Hence, the Alliance had invited the various powers to visit Starfall Island for this meeting. Starfall Island was a particularly dangerous location in Sea's End. Ordinary ships wouldn't make it into the sea zone, torn apart by the area's powerful sea monsters. One could only get through with a sufficiently strong fleet. A new power has joined the Freedom Alliance? Realization dawned upon Xueqi when he heard Sindhart's explanation. A commotion had occurred in the Freedom Alliance during Xueqi's previous life, but Silent Entropy, the original First Fleet's commander, had eventually suppressed it. Unfortunately, Silent Entropy and his fleet had suffered a massive setback thanks to Xueqi, which must have prevented him from controlling the situation. This resulted in a new power taking over the Freedom Alliance. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Since the Freedom Alliance has grown stronger, they want to see whether their partners still qualify to participate in their alliance. While I can understand its reasoning, I had never thought something like this would happen so suddenly, Sindhart said, smiling bitterly. I've recalled all of Immortal Light's best ships, but it'll probably be another 3 or 4 hours before they return. If we wait until then to leave, we'll likely be a little late to the Freedom Alliance's meeting. They would need a small fleet of bronze speedboats just to get to Starfall Island. Without sufficient strength, they'd only find death waiting for them. How many bronze speedboats and stronger have you gathered so far, Brother Hart? Xueqi asked. We currently have 8 bronze speedboats and 1 mysterious iron speedboat ready to depart, Sindhart said, shaking his head. It won't be enough to make it to Starfall Island. We'll need at least 20 bronze speedboats and a sailboat. 8 bronze speedboats and 1 mysterious iron speedboat? That'll be enough. We should set out right away, Xueqi declared. Chapter 2330, Mysterious Iron Sailboat, There Enough? Sindhart gave Xueqi a confused look. Normally, a small fleet of 8 bronze speedboats and a mysterious iron speedboat would be a formidable force, but they needed to reach Starfall Island. Starfall Island served as a transit point for players who wanted to explore level 100+ sea zones. Every sea monster near the island was level 95 or higher, and their population density was terrifying. One could even encounter Mythic-ranked King-class sea monsters in the area. Without a sufficiently powerful fleet, their journey to Starfall Island would be a one-way trip. I've brought a sailboat with me. With it, we should have enough combat power, Xueqi tried to reassure Sindhart when he saw the man's worried expression. He then took out the crystalline bottle housing the storm sailboat from his bag. A mysterious iron sailboat? Sindhart's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when he saw the storm sailboat. Sindhart had long since known that Zero Wing possessed superb naval power. The guild had both the secret silver-ranked Swift Dragon speedboat and bronze-ranked One-Horn sailboat, after all. Even now, there were only 2 known secret silver speedboats throughout the Apocalypse Empire: Pantheons and Zero Wings. Although a secret silver speedboat was only 1 rank higher than a mysterious iron speedboat, the difference between the 2 boats' combat power was like the difference between heaven and earth. Not even an ordinary sailboat was a match for a secret silver speedboat. When Phoenix Rain had secured her position on Thunder Island, Zero Wing's Swift Dragon speedboat had been a large part of the reason for her success. Moreover, the Freedom Alliance's Passing Monarch had relied on the Swift Dragon and One-Horn speedboats to secure the best territories the Freedom Alliance occupied. Although Passing Monarch hadn't been able to claim his as the Alliance's first fleet, he had secured the second rank enough authority that his word in the Freedom Alliance was only second to Silent Entropy's, the original First Fleet's commander. Passing Monarch had also become the reason that Immortal Light had been able to continue developing in the Apocalypse Empire. Sindhart had never dreamed that Zero Wing would have an even stronger ship. Reaching Starfall Island shouldn't be much of a problem with this storm sailboat, but it's getting pretty late. We should head out, Xueqi said as he stored the repaired storm sailboat. This is wonderful. We'll have a much better chance of securing our position now. Sind Heart exclaimed, brimming with confidence. Setting aside Zero-Wing's strength as a pseudo-superpower and the relationship between Passing Monarch and Xueqi, the Storm Sailboat would be more than enough to ensure Immortal Light retains its position as one of the Freedom Alliance's partners. In fact, it might even help improve relations between Immortal Light and the Freedom Alliance. Sind Heart gathered his men immediately, and they teleported to Sea's End's Blue Jade City with Xueqi. Once they arrived, they'd set sail towards Starfall Island's sea zone. Sea's End, Starfall Island. As a transit hub for players traveling to level 100+ sea zones, the island wasn't very populated right now. However, due to the Freedom Alliance's invitation, any power that wanted to remain a member of the Alliance had no choice but to brave the dangerous journey to the island. As a result, a large number of speedboats and sailboats filled Starfall Island's port. The weakest speedboat at the dock was bronze rank, and quite a few of them were mysterious iron rank. Even naval superpowers would be stunned by the grand sight. I wonder what stunt the Freedom Alliance is trying to pull this time? They called us all the way out here. It's likely that they're trying to determine whether or not we're strong enough to get this far. Ordinary powers have no hope of reaching this sea zone. We lost a considerable amount of durability just from the fights with the sea monsters on the way here. That's right. I came with a fleet of 20 bronze speedboats and 1 sailboat. If my fleet had been any weaker, I wouldn't have made it here. As the various powers' representatives discussed their journey to Starfall Island, they couldn't help but frown. They all had questions regarding the Freedom Alliance's invitation to such a dangerous place, and none of them knew what the Alliance intended. They could not figure out what the Freedom Alliance was trying to do. It should be known that the Freedom Alliance was a giant in Sea's End, and any power it allied itself with was formidable at sea. Otherwise, they couldn't guarantee the cargo's safety as they transported it across the sea, earning a stable income of resources and coins. I wonder how the Freedom Alliance intends to choose which partnerships it will maintain? The Alliance is nearly as powerful as the House of Seas and controls 5 of Sea's End's major cities. Even naval superpowers in other locations are afraid of the Freedom Alliance at this point. I assume they'll base their decisions on each power's strength and connections. Take Immortal Light, for example. As a second-rate guild, it doesn't qualify to partner with the Freedom Alliance, but because of its close relationship with Passing Monarch, the Third Fleet's commander, it can collect resources that not even first-rate guilds like ours can reach. Indeed. Immortal Light should be responsible for as much as 10% of the Freedom Alliance's resources. Even naval superpowers are envious. However, based on my information, Zero-Wing stands behind Immortal Light. The guild is a large part of the reason that Passing Monarch had risen to his current position. It is only natural that Immortal Light has been assigned better resources than other powers. As the various representatives chatted about Immortal Light, envy flashed in their eyes. There were over 30 powers cooperating with the Freedom Alliance, yet Immortal Light claimed 10% of the Freedom Alliance's resources. Immortal Light's luck will run out soon. I'm sure the Freedom Alliance intends to redistribute its resources during this meeting, and not even Silent Entropy has as much authority in the Alliance as he used to, much less Passing Monarch. I agree. Based on what insider information I've received, not only has the Freedom Alliance invited major powers like ours to this meeting, but it's also invited Giant's Heart from the Sea God's realm. Giant's Heart? You mean the guild that stole the Flare Fortress from the Pride Empire in the Fire Dragon Empire? The very same. Is there another Giant's Heart I don't know about? When the various representatives heard mention of Giant's Heart, their expressions darkened. They had never thought the superpower from the Sea God's realm would try to claim a piece of the pie. Ordinary players might not have heard of Giant's Heart, but the various major powers that paid constant attention to the shifts of power within God's domain would be quite familiar with the name by now. The superpower had successfully stolen a fortress from the Pride Empire, a super guild. With that move, Giant's Heart had proven that it was powerful enough to shake the various superpowers on the main continent. If Giant's Heart intervened in the Freedom Alliance's matters, it was almost certain to claim a large fraction of the Alliance's resources. Meanwhile, while the various major powers' representatives conversed, another fleet approached Starfall Island. Once they noticed the fleet, these representatives gaped, shocked. This fleet consisted of 60+ bronze speedboats, 11 mysterious iron speedboats, and 5 sailboats, 2 of which were bronze rank. This fleet was easily several times stronger than the various powers, and every ship bore the Giant's Heart Guild emblem on its sails. As these ships docked, over 1,000 players disembarked. Every one of these players was level 96 or above, with many at level 97. The weakest piece of equipment on these players was level 95 fine gold rank, and over a dozen of them wore level 95 fine gold set equipment. As for the several players leading the group wore a minimum of 5 pieces of epic equipment. As these players walked through the port, the various major powers members unconsciously stepped aside to open a path. Amazing! Too amazing! So, this is Giant's Heart? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Even if Zero Wing makes a personal appearance, Immortal Light will get nothing but the Freedom Alliance's scraps. These representatives couldn't help but admire the strength of Giant's Heart's fleet and members. Shortly after Giant's Heart's fleet docked, more ships appeared on the horizon. A sailboat, which was much larger than bronze sailboats and required 3 mainsails, led this small fleet. A faint layer of mana enveloped the entire sailboat. What is that? That sailboat is actually protected by a magic barrier. Wait, that's a mysterious iron sailboat. Chapter 2331. Times have changed. When someone had mentioned a mysterious iron sailboat, silence descended on the port as everyone stared intently at the approaching fleet. A mysterious iron sailboat? Impossible! To small guilds and adventurer teams, sailboats were unattainable treasures, but that wasn't the case for the major powers on Starfall Island. Ordinary sailboats were nothing special, and bronze sailboats at most would earn a surprised glance. For major powers, it was only a matter of time before they had their own bronze sailboats. Many of them already had clues and information that would lead to bronze sailboats, and as long as they had the strength and were willing to put in the time and resources to follow these clues, it wouldn't be difficult to secure a bronze sailboat. Otherwise, so many powers wouldn't have acquired their own by now. However, mysterious iron-ranked sailboats were an entirely different story. Not one power had found a single clue pertaining to mysterious iron sailboats' locations, much less acquired one. Although there was only one rank between a mysterious iron sailboat and a bronze sailboat, the difference between the two boats' strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. A bronze sailboat had slightly stronger defense and firepower than an ordinary sailboat, but at mysterious iron rank, its defense would undergo a qualitative transformation. At that point, a sailboat could block Great Lord-ranked sea monsters' attacks without losing any durability. As players explore higher-level sea zones, they'd encounter Great Lord-ranked sea monsters more frequently. Coming across 2 or 3 Great Lords at a time might not be an issue, but even a bronze sailboat would lose some durability during a fight with 5 or 6 Great Lords. Without multiple ships, long journeys at sea would be impossible, as would exploring dangerous sea zones. Crap! It really is a mysterious iron sailboat. A mysterious iron sailboat. Our guild could practically move unhindered through a level 100 sea zone if we had one of those. Amazing! Whose fleet is that? They actually sent a mysterious iron sailboat to lead it. The various major powers couldn't help their shock and curiosity as they watched the gradually approaching storm sailboat. Aside from the up-and-coming superpower, Giant's Heart, they hadn't expected another power with the ability to field a mysterious iron sailboat to participate in this meeting on Starfall Island. The storm sailboat glided to a stop by one of the port's docks while the representatives quietly chatted amongst themselves. As Immortal Light's members stepped onto the dock, many players quickly recognized Sind Heart. His arrival caused an instant sensation at the port. Sind Heart? That mysterious iron sailboat belongs to Immortal Light? Impossible! How can a guild like Immortal Light have a mysterious iron sailboat? Our guild has thoroughly investigated Immortal Light. That guild doesn't even have a bronze sailboat, much less a mysterious iron sailboat. The various major powers that had cooperated with the Freedom Alliance for a while knew, more or less, details about their competitors, especially the powers that were on friendly terms with the Freedom Alliance's upper echelons. Since Immortal Light received 10% of the Freedom Alliance's resources, the other powers had paid particularly close attention to the guild. Thus, all of these representatives knew how powerful Immortal Light was as a guild. However, none of them knew how to rationalize the storm sailboat they saw before them. No, that's not it. I don't see Immortal Light's guild emblem on the sailboat. It wasn't long before one of the players noticed something amiss. Moreover, the person beside Sind Heart looks like Zero Wings Yifeng. The declaration inspired everyone to take a closer look at the player accompanying Immortal Heart's guild leader. It's true. That's Zero Wings Yifeng. If that's the case, then the storm sailboat must be Zero Wings. Zero Wing is stronger than even the rumors have made it out to be. It actually possesses a mysterious iron sailboat. It seems Immortal Light has come prepared. So what if Immortal Light has Zero Wing support? Strength is everything on the ocean, and Zero Wing is only a pseudo-superpower on land. How could it possibly contend with naval guilds like ours? The various representatives sneered at Xueqi and Immortal Light's members. The status quo wasn't the same as it had been at sea. In the past, a powerful ship had been a significant asset to a power. After all, the various naval powers barely had enough ships to form a full fleet back then. However, even third-rate powers had their own fleets by now, not to mention first-rate powers. So, that's the rumored Zero Wing? I hadn't expected it to have a mysterious iron sailboat as well. It's no wonder why it dared to provoke war blood on Dragonheart Island. A tall, handsome man some distance away from the port stated. The man wore Giant's Heart's Guild emblem, and a hint of interest flashed in his eyes when he saw the storm sailboat. A mysterious iron sailboat is quite powerful, but unfortunately, it'll at most offer some convenience when grinding sea monsters. A single mysterious iron sailboat isn't enough to affect the power struggle at sea, a blue-haired woman added indifferently. Moreover, Zero Wing has provoked Starlink, which Old Undying has nurtured. Its future is quite bleak. Although Zero Wing's storm sailboat had indeed caused quite a commotion at Starfall Island's port, it was only a minor interlude to the Freedom Alliance's announcement regarding how it would redistribute its resources among its partners. Following which, the Freedom Alliance's members guided the various representatives to a reception room in the Freedom Alliance's residence on Starfall Island. Once everyone had arrived, the Freedom Alliance's 12 commanders entered and took their seats on the stage at the front of the room. These expert standards had clearly improved since the last time Xueqi had attended one of the Freedom Alliance's meetings. This was especially true for the First Fleet's representatives, who sat in the center of the stage. Although the First Fleet had only sent 2 representatives, both were apex experts. The middle-aged man, the First Fleet's commander, was particularly powerful. The First Fleet's commander only looked to be around 40, but Xueqi could sense a wild energy deep within the man. He felt like a veteran mercenary that had seen countless battlefields before. He was also a level 97 berserker. A young man with short hair stood behind the commander. The assassin youth radiated a chilling aura, and even Sindhart, who sat quite a distance away, felt an intense pressure from this youth. These 2 people alone would be more than enough to give the various superpowers a huge headache. It was no wonder why Silent Entropy, Passing Monarch, and the Freedom Alliance's other commanders had been overtaken. Since everyone's here, I'd like to begin with discussing our resource redistribution, Flame Robber, the First Fleet's commander, said as he swept his gaze over the gathered players. The resources under the Freedom Alliance's control have changed, and more powers have begun to target us. Hence, we have decided to re-examine our current partner's strength to ensure the safety of our future benefits. The method we will use to determine your strength is simple. We have stored some precious non-bag space materials on Starfall Island, and we'd like you to deliver these materials to the Chaos Sea's Ghost City. As long as you arrive safely with the materials, you will pass the test. The various representatives' expressions twisted when they heard Flame Robber's announcement. Even Sindhart's expression turned dark. God's domain's dark forces ruled over the Chaos Sea, and the players in the area were lunatics who only thought of slaughter. Dark players in the Chaos Sea were particularly powerful. Some of them could even control sea monsters, using them as tools for transportation and combat. In the Chaos Sea, even an expert fleet would suffer tremendously, and some would simply be annihilated. Most of the various superpowers tried to avoid the sea zone at all costs. If Immortal Light, a guild that was barely considered a first-rate power on land, tried to sail through the Chaos Sea, it was almost guaranteed that the journey would be a one-way trip. Flame Robber must have lost his mind. Big Sis leaves. He actually set up such a brutal test. If we agree to this, we'll lose over 80% of our partners, including many of his own supporters. What is he thinking? A level 96 female cleric asked from her seat with the Fourth Fleet's members. As far as she was concerned, Flame Robber's decision might weaken the other fleet's influence in the Freedom Alliance, but it would also weaken First Fleet's. No, he hasn't gone mad. I'm afraid that Passing Monarch will get hit the hardest with this decision, 100 Leaves, the Fourth Fleet's current commander, said as she watched Passing Monarch, who wore a similarly ugly expression. At the same time, she couldn't help but applaud Flame Robber's determination. Passing Monarch's fleet consists of independent adventurer teams, none of which have any background or support from major corporations. Passing Monarch has gone to great lengths to strengthen Immortal Light as his supporter, but after this redistribution, he'll lose the guild. If that's the case, Passing Monarch might also lose his position among the top 5 fleets in the Freedom Alliance during the next resource competition. While most of the Freedom Alliance's fleet commanders celebrated Passing Monarch's misfortune, the tall, handsome man from Giant's Heart, who sat with the other representatives, shifted his gaze toward Xueqi. What a pity. I had hoped I would get to see the power of a mysterious iron sailboat, but it seems that won't be the case, the handsome man said, sighing. I told you that a single ship means nothing at sea, the blue-haired woman said, rolling her eyes. Let's get moving. Once the sun sets, the Chaos Sea will become far more dangerous. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The handsome man fell silent and followed his companion out of the reception room. The other first-rate powers began to move, as well. They might not be a match for the various naval superpowers and wouldn't survive a direct clash with the Chaos Sea's dark players, but if they were careful and lucky, they could pass this test. Brother Yifeng, it seems this trip has been a waste of your time. I hadn't expected the Freedom Alliance to set up such a vicious test. However, I still intend to try. The Chaos Sea is the Dark Forces territory, but with how vast it is, I might be able to avoid dark players if I'm lucky, Sindhart said, gritting his teeth. The Freedom Alliance's resources were too important for Immortal Light to give up. He had to take this risk and try to pass the test. You don't need to take everything on yourself, Brother Hart. Zero Wing is Immortal Light's major shareholder, and this matter involves resources that my guild requires. Naturally, Zero Wing will participate as well, Xueqi declared, shaking his head. He then glanced at Flame Robber, who had stood and was about to leave the room. Flame Robber had certainly played his cards well. Unfortunately, he had chosen the wrong opponent. Chapter 2332. Steel Giant, I'll have to trouble you then, Brother Yifeng, Sindhart said. He felt both grateful and ashamed when Xueqi had offered to help. Zero Wing's help was a large part of the reason that Immortal Light had acquired its current strength. Sindhart had thought that with Immortal Light's development, it could return the favor more or less, but it seemed that the guild needed to rely on Zero Wing once again. However, Immortal Light's fleet would have a greater chance of reaching Ghost City with Zero Wing's storm sailboat. Sindhart then began to make the necessary arrangements for Immortal Light's remaining bronze speedboats and sailboat to meet him at Starfall Island for a final struggle. If Immortal Light could secure the Freedom Alliance's resources, it would qualify as a first-rate naval power. It might even become an overlord in the Apocalypse Empire. After all, the Freedom Alliance controlled 5 major cities in Sea's End, with more than double the resources it used to have. Moreover, it would likely acquire more as time passed. Naturally, Immortal Light could reap more benefits from its partnership with the Freedom Alliance, as well. While Sindhart mobilized Immortal Light's experts, the other major powers began to do the same. After just 8 hours, sailboats and speedboats crowded Starfall Island's port. The spectacular scene stupefied the adventurer teams and guilds that rested on the island. More than 30 expert fleets had docked, and the weakest ship among them was a bronze speedboat. Moreover, the weakest fleet had a minimum of 30 bronze speedboats and 3 sailboats. If these fleets cooperated, they could even take on level 90+ mythic ranked sea monsters. Of all of the fleets present, the most eye-catching was undoubtedly Giant's Heart's. Giant's Heart's fleet consisted of 100 bronze speedboats, over 20 mysterious iron speedboats, and 10 sailboats. Of the 10 sailboats, 4 were bronze rank. Not even the Freedom Alliance's first fleet had such combat power. Yet this wasn't all that Giant's Heart possessed. Giant's Heart is terrifyingly powerful. It's no wonder why it defeated Pride Empire in the Fire Dragon Empire, 100 Leaves, who watched the ships gather from one of Starfall Town's lookout towers, commented as she inspected Giant's Heart's fleet. Giant's Heart had sought out Passing Monarch to cooperate, but Passing Monarch was too stubborn and refused the offer. He's likely regretting his decision to continue his partnership with Immortal Light. Even the Sacred Temple was afraid of the naval power Giant's Heart displayed. If Passing Monarch had agreed to work with the guild, he could have competed for the first fleet position. However, Passing Monarch had given this opportunity to Flame Robber. Big Sis Leaves, are we really going to hold back the guild's strength? 1. The The female cleric beside 100 Leaves anxiously asked. Our position in the Freedom Alliance isn't stable enough. If we openly rely on the guild's strength, even a fool would realize that we're members of the Sacred Temple, not just a team with the guild's support, 100 Leaves said, shaking her head. She then turned towards Silent Entropy's group nearby with a bright smile. Flame Robber might have Giant Heart support, but Silent Entropy won't just take this lying down. All we need to do is watch those two go at each other's throats and wait for an opportune moment. When Sind Heart saw the various major powers' fleets from the port, he suddenly felt tiny. Immortal Light was a top-ranked naval power in the Apocalypse Empire, but if it weren't for the Storm Sailboat, it would be the weakest power here. Even Xueqi was surprised when he saw the multiple fleets. He hadn't expected God's Domain's naval powers to develop so quickly, especially Giant's Heart. Even on Dragonheart Island, very few powers could contend with the guild. Dragonheart Island's powers weren't limited to the human variety. Many neutral powers also operated from the island, including super first-rate guilds and super guilds. Once the fleets were ready, the Freedom Alliance's members began to move crate after crate of cargo onto the various powers' ships. When the representatives saw the cargo, they were stunned into a moment of silence. How is this possible? They want us to transport Primal Void Stone. There are so many Primal Void Stones here. Has the Freedom Alliance discovered a Primal Void Vein? Everyone was shocked when they saw the translucent crystals within the crates. All of these players were either experts or upper echelons from major powers, so they had seen many precious items in God's domain. However, they couldn't help their astonishment when they saw the Primal Void Stones. Primal Void Stone was a top-tier material that could be used to construct all sorts of high-ranked workshops. Primal Void Stone could absorb mana from the void, and although the amount it could store was minute, this mana could enhance players' mental processing, which was particularly useful to lifestyle players when they produced items. Buildings made with Primal Void Stone could also help combat players when training their skill or spell completion rates. Hence, the various large guilds had been desperately collecting Primal Void Stone to construct training rooms or workshops within their guild towns to help their members improve. Unfortunately, Primal Void Stone was a non-bag space item and incredibly rare. Collecting enough stones to construct a training room was a dream at this stage of the game. And yet, the Freedom Alliance revealed that it had so many available. Why wouldn't this shock the various major powers present? Seeing so many Primal Void Stones even stunned Xueqi. He hadn't thought that the Freedom Alliance would have so many in its possession. The various superpowers had treated buildings constructed with Primal Void Stone as sacred places for their players to improve skill or spell completion rates and craft items during his previous life. However, due to the scarcity of the stone, even those superpowers had only been able to construct a small number of buildings. Hence, the Superpowers Guild members had exclusive access to these buildings, and some of these superpowers hadn't even given access to their low-ranked members. It's no wonder why they want us to head to Ghost City. Xueqi immediately understood the Freedom Alliance's plans when he saw the crate's contents. Primal Void Stone could be used for more than constructing buildings. It would also be helpful when improving certain dark players' bloodline density. Hence, Primal Void Stone was extremely popular among dark players, who were generally willing to pay 3 or 4 times more than the market price. I'm sure that you've all seen the Primal Void Stones. As you've probably guessed, the Freedom Alliance has taken control of a Primal Void Vein, Flame Robber suddenly announced, smiling. However, the vein's output is quite high, which makes it difficult to transfer all of the stones. Not even the Freedom Alliance can monopolize all of the stones. Thus, we wish to share our harvest with a sufficiently powerful partner. In return, the Freedom Alliance will only ask for half of the generated profits. Not only will this delivery test to Ghost City determine who qualifies to remain a partner with the Freedom Alliance, but we also hope to use the results to find a suitable collaborator for the Primal Void Veins products. Whoever among you delivers their shipment to Ghost City first will be invited to work with the Freedom Alliance regarding the Primal Void Vein. I do not believe any of our commanders are opposed to this, correct? As Flame Robber finished speaking, he glanced at the Freedom Alliance's fleet commanders beside him. Although he seemed as if he were asking for their opinions, he had no intention to negotiate. How despicable! Which commander would dare oppose such an idea under such circumstances? The female cleric behind 100 Leaves quietly cursed. Flame Robber was clearly trying to hand the share of the Primal Void Vein to Giant's Heart. Silent Entropy, who had seemed relatively calm, revealed an ugly expression. On the other hand, the other commanders silently celebrated the decision. The Primal Void Veins harvest would be distributed according to rank, with the first and second fleets gaining the most benefits. The remaining fleets would only acquire a small percentage of the goods, so it didn't really matter if they shared the harvest with a foreign power. This distribution would only harm the top-ranked fleets. None of the various major powers voiced any complaints. Even a fool could tell that Flame Robber was trying to ensure that Giant's Heart received these resources. Anyone that objected now would be setting themselves up for the Freedom Alliance to sever their relationship. Since none of his fellow commanders had anything to say, Flame Robber announced the beginning of the test. Like a raging tide, the various major powers' fleets swarmed toward the Chaos Sea. They all wanted to reach Ghost City by nightfall. Not only would the Chaos Sea's dark players have more of an advantage at night, but more sea monsters would become active as well. We should go, Brother Yifeng. As Sindhart watched the various fleets leave the port, he too felt an urgent need to move. Hold on a second. I have something I'd like to ask Commander Flame Robber before we leave, Xuefeng said. Instead of hurrying as everyone else did, he turned to Flame Robber nearby and asked, Commander Flame, to acquire partnership rights for the Primal Void Vein, we only need to be the first to deliver our shipment of Void Stones to Ghost City. Is that correct? Xuefeng's question confused the fleet commanders and the representatives that lingered. Why is he asking such a question? Does he think this situation is unfair? What's unfair about it? Strength is everything in God's domain. If he thinks this is unfair, he can bring it up with Giant's Heart. We watch as they beat this brat to death. He has helped Passing Monarch quite a bit in the past. Does he think Passing Monarch will do something to return the favor? All of the Freedom Alliance's commanders remembered Xuefeng, especially Identical Summer, the original Second Fleet's commander. It was Xuefeng's interference that he had fallen to the Fifth Fleet position. Identical Summer wanted nothing more than watch Xuefeng die. Passing Monarch, on the other hand, could only offer a bitter smile. Even Flame Robber was puzzled as to why Xuefeng had asked such a question. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, that's right. So long as you are the first to deliver your shipment of Primal Void Stones to Ghost City, you'll become the Freedom Alliance's partner regarding the Primal Void Vein, Flame Robber firmly stated. Ah, then I can rest assured, Xuefeng said, smiling before he walked toward the crates assigned to Immortal Light. Rest assured. Everyone's confusion grew as they watched Xuefeng leave. They couldn't figure out what Flame Robber had said to assure him. Xuefeng then moved to a clearing near Immortal Light's shipment. He placed a hand on his bag and began to chant an incantation. 2 seconds later, a crimson steel ship appeared above him. Even the storm sailboat looked insignificant compared to the gigantic steel beast. However, that wasn't what fascinated the players watching. What held their attention was the fact that this steel ship was floating above the ground. Chapter 2333. Starfall Shaken, a flying ship. How is this possible? The Crimson Dragon flying ship's appearance sent Starfall Island into an uproar. The Freedom Alliance's commanders and the players that rested on the island stared at the steel giant with dropped jaws. By now, practically every God's Domain player was familiar with the concept of flying ships. Players who lived in or had visited an NPC city that had an airport would have seen flying ships soar through the sky. And almost every player that had seen one dreamed of one day traveling through God's domain aboard their own flying ship. Zero Wing actually has a flying ship. Big Sis leaves. Short Clarity, the female cleric standing behind 100 Leaves, exclaimed, staring at the distant Crimson Dragon flying ship in astonishment. Am I dreaming? Everyone, ordinary and superpowers alike, was desperately searching for flying mounts nowadays. Naturally, the Sacred Temple was no exception, but it had yet to find a single one. And yet, Zero Wing already had a flying ship. For a moment, Short Clarity wondered if the main god system were playing a joke on her. A flying ship. It's no wonder why Zero Wing dared to provoke both Warblood and Starlink on Dragonheart Island. 100 Leaves was similarly shocked. Zero Wing has fooled everyone. Although Dragonheart Island was very far away from Sea's End, as one of the Sacred Temple's upper echelons, 100 Leaves would have been informed of matters on Dragonheart Island. The Sacred Temple had launched a detailed investigation on Zero Wing. It was the first guild in God's domain to obtain a flying mount, after all, which would have a major impact on the game. However, after watching Zero Wing blatantly provoke Warblood and Starlink, Even the sacred temple had begun to wonder where Zero Wing found its confidence. A flying mount might possess incredible combat power and significantly reduce players' travel time, but it was only a mount. It did not have enough combat power for a single player to face an entire superpower, much less two. However, the same couldn't be said for a flying ship. Such a vessel was a bona fide war weapon. Sind Hart, who stood a short distance from Xueqi, was just as stupefied. The two great experts behind him couldn't even piece a thought together as they stared at the Crimson Dragon flying ship. They had been able to accept the fact that Xueqi had the Storm sailboat. The guild had revealed that it owned a bronze sailboat a long time ago, after all. It wasn't that surprising to learn that Zero Wing had a mysterious iron sailboat. But Xueqi had just pulled a flying ship from his bag. What was up with that? Meanwhile, Xueqi quickly loaded the primal void stones on the Crimson Dragon flying ship. Silence descended on the port as the nearby payers watched him do it. To everyone's surprise, the shipment that would require 3 sailboats to transport fit on the single Crimson Dragon flying ship. "Brother Hart, let's go," Xueqi called out once he finished transferring the crates. Xueqi's shout shook everyone from their stupor. Sind Hart replied with a stiff nod, robotically following Xueqi as he boarded the flying ship. Once Immortal Light's other members figured out what was happening, they scurried aboard the flying ship as well. As everyone watched, over 100 Immortal Light members took their places on the Crimson Dragon flying ship. From the flying ship's deck, Immortal Light's members noticed the spectators' envious gazes. At the moment, they felt as if they had reached the peak of their lifetimes. Crap! Immortal Light's members are so lucky. They actually get to ride a flying ship. I wish I could ride the flying ship too. My friends would die from jealousy if they saw me on one. I knew I should have joined Zero Wing. The crowd at the port wanted nothing more than to drag Immortal Light's members off the Crimson Dragon flying ship and take their place. But when they saw the patrolling NPC soldiers, they abandoned the idea. Good. Let's set off. Once Immortal Light's members were on board, Xueqi piloted the Crimson Dragon flying ship, and it slowly ascended into the air. As the flying ship rose roughly a kilometer above the ground, he ramped up the engine. The flying ship transformed into a crimson blur as it shot forth, crossing 300 yards in the blink of an eye. It was far faster than an extraordinary flying mount. After a few short seconds, the Crimson Dragon flying ship vanished over the horizon. So, that was a flying ship? It's insanely fast. Giant's Heart won't stand a chance against Immortal Light. Cool. That flying ship was so cool. No matter what, I've got to join Zero Wing. After watching the Crimson Dragon flying ship fly off, a commotion erupted among the independent players and major powers members on Starfall Island. They had all known that flying ships were powerful, but they hadn't expected the vessel to be this powerful. Speedboats and sailboats were little more than snails compared to a flying ship. Furthermore, the flying ship's capacity for non-bag space items was unbeatable. The remaining representatives on the island stared after the flying ship with wide, bulging eyes. They had never dreamed that a land-based guild would pull such a move against them. A flying ship. That's impossible. Players can't get their hands on such an item. Just how did Zero Wing do it? The blue-haired woman on one of Giant Heart's bronze sailboats exclaimed, surprised and confused after watching the Crimson Dragon flying ship soar over Giant Heart's fleet. The Sea God's realm was one of the strongest otherworlds. Players from the otherworld had even more access to resources, legacies, and information than those on the main continent. The only thing the Sea God's realm lacked, compared to the main continent, was technology. The Sea God's realm simply didn't have the resources to support its lifestyle players as the main continent did. The otherworld's lifestyle classes even struggled to produce secret silver equipment. Despite the advantages the Sea God's realm's players possessed, a flying ship was still out of their reach, yet Zero Wing had one of its own. She couldn't understand how this had happened. Zero Wing, is it? The handsome man beside the blue-haired woman revealed a rare smile as he watched the Crimson Dragon flying ship fade into the distance. This is interesting. I wonder what the boss will do with this information? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Once the flying ship was gone, the Freedom Alliance's commanders revealed a myriad of expressions. Some commanders were enraged, while others rejoiced. Some expressed their admiration, and some voiced their envy. Passing Monarch's luck is impressive. Flame Robber has gone to great lengths to set up this ploy, yet it's turned around to bite him, 100 Leaves surmised, a hint of envy flashing in her eyes as she glanced at passing monarch. Regardless of what would happen to the Crimson Dragon flying ship in the future, there was no doubt that Immortal Light would win the partnership rights to the Primal Void Vein. At that time, Immortal Light was guaranteed to grow stronger, which would, in turn, bolster passing monarch's authority in the Freedom Alliance. What should we do about the Crimson Dragon flying ship? Big Sis leaves. Short Clarity asked. We don't have the authority to decide that. We'll just report these events to the higher-ups, 100 Leaves said, an excited brightening her expression. A flying ship. This news will shake the very foundation of God's domain. Chapter 2334. Start of a new era. Shortly after Xueqi piloted the Crimson Dragon flying ship away from Starfall Island, the various major powers members frantically began to report to their superiors. At this point, none of them paid any mind to the Freedom Alliance's decision to re-evaluate its partners. After all, the appearance of a flying ship represented the start of a new era. Guild leader. Guess what I just saw on Starfall Island? A flying ship. Someone already obtained a flying ship. What? Don't believe me? I'll send you a video of it. You'll know once you see it. That flying ship is amazing. Excitement sparked among the independent players and various powers members on Starfall Island as they discussed the Crimson Dragon flying ship. When the various powers' upper echelons received the reports, they lost their minds. Thus far, they only knew of one flying mount in a player's possession right now, let alone a flying ship. How could someone have already obtained a flying ship? However, when these upper echelons saw the video clips from their subordinates, they were utterly dumbfounded. Passion, envy, greed. These emotions overwhelmed the various major powers' upper echelons as they watched the recordings of the Crimson Dragon flying ship. Almost immediately, they ordered all-out investigations on Zero Wing. They were all determined to learn how Zero Wing had gotten its hands on the flying ship. Some powers even offered a reward of several epic weapons and equipment for any information related to the vessel on the public forums. When Xueqi saw the posts, the rewards even tempted him, and for a moment, he even considered selling the information himself. While these major powers looked into Zero Wing and its Crimson Dragon flying ship, Xueqi's group reached the expansive Chaos Sea. The Chaos Sea was the Dark Forces territory, and the sea zone was a mess of chaotic and violent energy, which was harmful to normal players' mental states. It wouldn't affect dark players, however. Rather, it would strengthen them, which was why normal players tended to avoid the area. As a sea zone, the Chaos Sea was a dangerous place to grind. Once enemy players surrounded newcomers, there'd be nowhere to run for cover. The Chaos Sea was a forbidden land for normal players. The instant the Crimson Dragon flying ship crossed into the Chaos Sea, Sindhart and his companions felt an indescribable weight bear down on them. Their senses became less sensitive as well, which made it impossible to exhibit their normal combat power. So, this is the Chaos Sea? Sindhart was relieved he was aboard the Crimson Dragon flying ship as he gazed at the thin layer of fog that covered the ocean below. The Chaos Sea was far more dangerous than he had expected. The thin fog that covered the water wasn't actual fog. It was the physical manifestation of some kind of chaotic energy. This chaotic energy had a powerful influence on normal players. While surrounded by the fog, he could, at most, see up to 1,000 yards away. However, it wouldn't affect dark players in the slightest. In other words, dark players would discover normal players in the Chaos Sea long before normal players could realize they were being targeted. The dark players would have the initiative in battle, and normal players would have no way to escape. After a few minutes, Sindhart and the others noticed a group of players ganging up on a level 93 mythic ranked sea monster. Every one of those players rode an 8-meter-tall demonic creature into battle. Players had nicknamed these demonic creatures mini sea monsters. The demonic creatures were incredibly powerful, with the weakest among them possessing the strength of a lord. The stronger creatures could even rival a great lord's strength. They were far more powerful than land mounts. Meanwhile, bombarded by the fierce attacks of several hundred demonic creatures, the level 93 mythic sea monster rapidly lost HP. Oceania demonic creatures might not have as much attack power as an actual ship, but they were easily more mobile. Moreover, they could easily tank a mythic sea monster's attacks with their high HPs and player-made armor. It was only a matter of time before the level 93 mythic sea monster fell. They're looking this way. They've discovered us. Thankfully, we're flying. If we were sailing, they'd likely annihilate us. Immortal Light's members felt an immense pressure bear down on them as they watched the dark players below. Even the lowest leveled player among those dark players was level 95, and they all radiated auras that were as strong as great lords of the same level. If these several hundred dark players attacked with their demonic creatures, they could likely decimate an entire expert fleet. Meanwhile, countless dark teams of their caliber filled the Chaos Sea. Just the thought of sailing through all of those players made their scalps tingle. Fortunately, Immortal Light's members rode Zero Wings' flying ship. Even if those dark players had noticed them, they couldn't do anything about it. The dark players could only stare as they flew away. The dark players fighting the mythic sea monster were even more shocked than Immortal Light's players. A flying ship? What's going on? I thought only one player in God's domain has found a flying mount thus far? How does someone already have a flying ship? They're not here to kill steel, are they? The dark players nervously watched the steel giant fly across the sky. They were all afraid that the vessel's pilot had set their sights on their team. Their team had gone to great lengths to locate this mythic sea monster, and they were banking on it to elevate their overall combat power so they could contest for better hunting grounds later. If that flying ship decided to steal the kill, they'd only be able to cry as they watched someone else claim their prey. None of them were afraid of a fight, but a battle was only worth fighting if they had a chance. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EUA flying ship was a war weapon and an overlord of the sky. Its combat power was on an entirely different level. Their demonic creatures wouldn't be much help, either. Demonic creatures were quite mobile, but they had very few long-range attacks. If the Crimson Dragon flying ship stopped 400 or 500 meters above them and bombarded the team from there, they wouldn't have any means to retaliate. As the Crimson Dragon flying ship drifted out of sight, the dark players breathed a sigh of relief and continued their raid on the level 93 mythic sea monster with peace of mind. The Chaos Sea was large enough that it could contain multiple land-based empires. Even a bronze sailboat would need more than a day to travel from Starfall Island to Ghost City. However, the Crimson Dragon flying ship could complete the journey in several hours. As the city came into sight, Sindhart felt as if he were dreaming. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.